guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called I Thought You Were a Time-Limited Husband. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! The story begins on a stormy evening at the Dayroth mansion, where our girl is completely blind to what is going on as she listens to someone give her a 6-month deadline to kill her husband. She appears confused, prompting the villain-like lady in front of her to yell at her, demanding that she respond and mentioning that she better do a good job considering that she paid money to take her from her family. Still, our lead character, a girl with golden eyes and pink hair, doesn't understand a word until she feels a sharp ache in her head, which triggers a flood of memories, including the fact that her father sold her to this wealthy family. She then realizes that this, middle-aged, angry-looking lady is Cullion Dayroth, the stepmother of her husband, whom she married only today. Now that Alice understands what's happening, she promptly apologizes to Cullion, who reminds her that she should not consider herself the Duchess, but rather her pawn. In an authoritative voice, Cullion orders her to ensure that our girl's husband, the Duke, is no longer alive after 6 months, to which she nervously complies. She loses all strength and falls to the floor in a state of confusion as Cullion exits the room and questions what is happening to her. After that, she chooses to check her reflection in the mirror. She's startled to see that she's inside another person's body, but she adores how lovely she appears. That aside, though, she begins to recall the events of what happened to her. She is Han Soo-yeon, a kitchen assistant who isn't exactly a culinary expert, but while carrying out her daily work and attempting to make ends meet, she was involved in a gas explosion incident. That's new. Truck-kun was off duty that day, huh? She feels bad, as she most likely died after that, but in any case, she is no longer Han Soo-yeon, but rather Alice. Fortunately, she still retains memories of Alice and discovers that despite being born into aristocracy, their family was not wealthy, and the one joyful memory she has is of being carried by her mother. Because Alice's father saw her as an added stress between her brother, who would succeed him, and her younger sister, who was unwell, he had her married off to the Dayroth ducal family. The name Alice is starting to sound familiar, and the Alice in Wonderland movie is the first thing that pops into her head. This girl is really unserious. She throws such useless ideas aside and recalls reading a novel similar to her own situation, in which the wife was told by her mother-in-law to kill her husband. The couple's story serves merely as an introduction to the novel. The wife's name in the novel was Alice Dayroth, the same name she now possesses. Alice is getting lightheaded by the realization that she has to kill someone. Furthermore, she knows that her husband, whoever he is already in a coma, so she can picture him as a lifeless corpse. But as she peeks into the bedroom, she is pleasantly surprised to see a sleeping beauty, which makes her blush all over. As she starts to swoon over his toned body, she swiftly averts her gaze in an effort to control her excitement. Oh my, girl needs to calm down! She then recalls Alice's fate in the novel, shocked to learn that she faces a hanging death sentence for poisoning her husband. It's evident that your mother-in-law is using you as a scapegoat, sweetie. When Alice realizes this, she tries to bang herself against the wall in an attempt to wake up from this strange dream. But it doesn't work, so she ends up lying next to him, curled up and unsure what to do. Eventually, she nods off and awakens to a nightmare in which she is racing through the dark to reach the light when, all of a sudden, a man embraces her from behind and declares that she will never be able to get away. Alice wakes up gasping for air, but her nightmare is quickly forgotten as she realizes she is holding her husband and resting her hand on his chest. She intends to keep it that way, but her conscience pushes her to take it off. This girl, really! This handsome-looking guy is Kaelas Dayroth, an extraordinary young duke who became unconscious due to his stepmother's poisoning and would eventually die in the story. Alice is heartbroken that Kaelas' only option is to remain in a coma until his death, only to have her thoughts abruptly interrupted by a knock from Maris, her maid, who has just brought her water for a wash. Alice can tell by the way this woman looks that Madame Cullion has sent her to keep an eye on her, and she is not mistaken because this girl has the arrogance to simply lay the basin of water in front of her rather than washing Alice herself. Maris smirks, intending to show no respect to Alice, considering that she's only someone Madame Cullion is taking advantage of, yet is shocked when Alice merely smiles instead of being irritated by her behavior. Because this is nothing new for Alice, she has been through worse. She washes her face and even praises Maris for the perfectly tempered water, which irritates the maid, who then responds that the madam is waiting for her. Seeing the maid's irritated expression is satisfying. As they say, kill your enemies with kindness. When Alice arrives, she gracefully greets her mother-in-law, but Cullion is unimpressed and simply orders her to sit. They appear to have another guest for this meeting, and it is none other than Dr. Helkin, a lovely man with long silver hair and glasses. Alice gets goosebumps when she sees him, as she remembers that this genius doctor created the colorless and odorless poison for Madame Cullion, which transformed Kalis into the helpless man he is today. However, Alice is grinning mischievously since she intends to take advantage of this comrade of hers. She could be a simp for her stunning hubby, but I believe this girl is also smart. During the meeting, Helkin explains that the poison he made can kill the Duke in about 3 months. He adds that once consumed, it will cause Kalis's internal organs to decay, and the best part is that it will leave no trace, thus an autopsy will reveal nothing. Already astounded by the poison that rendered Kalis unconscious, Madame Cullion is overjoyed to hear this news and commends him for concocting such a lethal poison. After that, she is interested in knowing if Kalis will experience any pain when his organs start to deteriorate. But she's disappointed when Helkin answers no, because Kalis will be in a deep sleep. Imagine being unable to move and experience such suffering! This evil stepmother is insane! Alice trembles as she listens to Cullion, who then explains that killing Kalis in 3 months will be problematic because Edelm, her son, will not have yet reached the age of 16. For the Emperor to authorize the succession to the Duke title, a noble must be at least 16 years old, and Cullion is concerned that once Kalis's death is announced, the indirect family would begin demanding the title. Helkin laughs, realizing that this is why Cullion wanted him to create sleeping poison, so Kalis could keep the title while she managed the duchy until Edelm reached adulthood. Helkin then assures the evil stepmother that there is no reason to worry because they only have to adjust the amount of poison consumed to extend the killing time to 6 months. He draws Alice's attention and informs her that because she is the one who will be feeding the poison to the Duke, she needs to reduce the intake, which she is compelled to do. After they exit the room, Alice requests Helkin for a private talk, so they go to Helkin's workroom, and she is relieved that it's soundproof. So when the doctor decides to explain the dosage of the poison she must give Kalis, she cuts him off and states facts such as his age, 35, his medical knowledge, and his hobby of collecting poisonous herbs. This doctor is starting to sweat from her abrupt shift in tone, but Alice just smiles and says she knows a lot about him. She then asks him directly why, knowing how cruel Madame Cullion is, he messed with the duchy's assets. Helkin becomes serious and accuses Alice of spouting nonsense and framing him. However, when Alice gestures to his shelf and suggests that if she pushes it, he should prepare to bid farewell to the world, the panic on his face is almost comical. Alice read in the novel that the rare, deadly herbs Helkin collected are behind the bookshelves, and each is worth a mansion. When the duchy was in chaos following Kalis's collapse, he stole the family treasure to purchase herbs. He could have bought property or something else, but nope, he wants plants. This guy is crazy! Then, with a seemingly innocent smile, Alice threatens to tell Madame Cullion about it, and Helkin quakes in terror, thinking Cullion will surely chop off his head if she finds out. After that, Alice clarifies that she just wants to do business with him and has no plans to expose him to Cullion. Ooh, she better get both poison and antidote. As she steps into the Duke's chamber that night, she is met by Adolf, the Duke's butler and Kalis's last remaining ally. Even though the medicine isn't helping, Madame Cullion let Adolf give it to Kalis so she can maintain her image as a caring mother. So in order to pull the butler away from Kalis, Cullion brings Alice into the picture and ensures that she gives Kalis poison. Tonight, as the Duchess, Alice is in charge of the Duke's medicine, so she shows him the medication she received from the doctor, to which Adolf is suspicious but has no authority to intervene. After Adolf leaves the room, Alice sits near Kalis but gets startled when this annoying maid bursts into the room, claiming that she's come to verify whether Alice will indeed administer the poison to Kalis as instructed by Madame Cullion. She even demands our girl to hurry up. But instead of becoming enraged, Alice smiles, convinced that this situation is actually favorable to her because having Maris report back to Cullion will make her less suspicious. She then gently assists the sleeping Kalis in drinking the entire bottle of poison before immediately showing Maris the empty vial. When Maris exits the room, Alice goes on to talk with Kalis, assuring him that the drink she gave him was not poison. As expected, she asked Helkin to create an antidote, but it appears that developing an antidote for Kaelus's condition is impossible. Alice, of course, felt he was lying, so Helkin went on to explain that no antidote or divine power works on the poison that was given to the Duke, and that even if they don't continue giving him poison, he is positive that the Duke will die within a year. However, this does not mean that Alice will continue to feed the Duke the poison. In order to deceive Cullion, she ordered Helkin to create something resembling the poison, and he succeeded in creating a bottle of supplements. Alice sighs because she sincerely wants to save Kaelus, but it appears that there's no way to cure him. So staring at his beautiful face and thinking that he will die so early is such a waste. Well, they're just supporting characters, so... Anyway, she notices that his arm slides, so she decides to tuck it in when she discovers that his arm has a festering wound. She already feels awful for him, and the fact that no one spotted Kaelus's severe wounds worries her even more. Despite her failure to save Kaelus's life, she is determined to help him in his recovery from this injury. As she reaches out to examine the wound, a sudden burst of light from her palm catches her completely off guard. After that, she notices that Kaelus's arm is halfway healed, and seeing the light and healing convinces her that she possesses divine power. I like how she's not that clueless. Well, our girl isn't ignorant about such things because she has read so many novels and understands magic and heavenly power. But what confuses her is that the original Alice does not have this kind of power. Armed with this newfound knowledge, she gives it another go, this time placing her touch on the scar to bring the light once more and make Kaelus's arm scar-free. She doesn't understand what's happening to her, but she thinks the gods must have felt guilty about bringing her into the world, and they must have compensated by giving her these abilities. Regardless, she chooses to pat him as a way to end the day before she leaves the room. After that, Kaelus moves his hand and opens his eyes, and oh my goodness, he's so lovely now that he's awake! Alice woke him up! All this time, Kaelus is in a dark place, trying to break free from the black shadows that surround him, and is on the verge of giving up when, out of nowhere, he sees a glimmer of light. With what little energy he has left, he gets to his feet and dashes to it, which jolts him awake. As if he had just woken up from a nightmare, he sits up and rubs his head in confusion. Kaelus's mother died not long after giving birth to him, and his father's mistress, Cullion, who fell pregnant shortly after his mother's death, also lost her baby after birth. This is tragic, but Kaelus's father is a jerk for getting pregnant so soon after his wife died. Cullion is a nameless noble, and after losing her baby, everyone anticipated her to be kicked out. But she was lucky when the Duke fell and became disabled after riding a horse while playing with a barmaid. Karma did get him, though. Following that, scandals harmed the Duke's reputation, forcing de Roth's vassals to hand the duchy to Cullion, as Kaelus was only 2 years old at the time. Look at the adorable baby Kaelus sucking his thumb! After a few years, Kaelus began to mature into a fine young man, which concerned Cullion since he may take her rule, so she attempted to kill him in a variety of ways, including poisoning his food and hiring an assassin. However, when her methods fail, she sent the mere 12-year-old boy to the battlefield where everyone assumed he would die. But her plans backfired, and Kaelus came back even stronger, becoming a hero in the war. Thanks to his service in the war, Kaelus became Duke at the age of 16. But when he returned home, he was horrified to find that his stepmother had secured herself a son while he was gone. Am I to assume that he is his half-brother, or that Cullion had an affair? Anyway, Kaelus couldn't just throw her away because of this, so he moved Cullion to the Annex while he focused on making the de Roth Duchy great again. He had spent a decade establishing their family's image and had forgotten about the wicked woman who lived in his annex. He has no recollection of anything prior to drinking water, and has come to the conclusion that Cullion must have drugged him. As a result, he intends to investigate fully. Kaelus extends his stiff body and decides to remove his shirt to change when he finds that the injury he sustained during the war, specifically from dark magic, has healed. Everyone told him it would never heal, even with divine power or magic potions, and he thought it would have festered by now. However, there isn't even a scar, which baffles him. He decides not to think about it right now because he has more important things to worry about, so he leaps through his balcony and visits the shaken Adolf with a proud smile. Adolf is crying with relief as he reports to Kaelus what happened. Cullion has moved to their main mansion. She has dismissed his aide and the captain of his guards, and she has disbanded the de Roth Knights, also known as the Knights of the Black Lion, who led the war to triumph. Kaelus then discovers that it has been 6 months since he was in a coma, that all of the servants have been replaced and that they have a new doctor, Helkin. But what surprises him the most is that he is married. Uh-oh, I just know their first meeting is going to be a disaster. 2 days later, at their meeting with Cullion, she compliments Alice on completing her duty correctly, which Alice shamelessly smiles about as Dr. Helkin sweats on the side. He then casts a glance at our girl, who instantly changes her innocent-looking smile into a deadly gaze in order to ensure that Helkin does not do anything funny, causing this poor doctor to tremble. Alice is quite clever since, in addition to threatening him with his hidden rare herbs, she is also aware that Helkin has been selling on the black market. She couldn't forget reading this in the novel because the name of Helkin's shop is weird, so if this guy attempts to deny his sins, she can simply look into his shop, which was established with Dayroth money. Oh, she's really playing her cards correctly. After that, Alice hears that Lady Meltine will be visiting their mansion to learn about the capital before making her debut in high society. This alarms Alice because Lady Meltine is intended to arrive in the story after the Duke's death, implying that the original story is changing. As I already mentioned, Alice and Kalis are merely supporting characters, so allow me to give you a little overview of the story to which our girl transmigrated. She shows up in a novel, I Shall Offer the Crown to You, where Lady Sienna Meltine, Kalis' younger cousin, is the female lead. So the book begins with Kalis' death, prompting Sienna to make her way to the capital, where the Duke was immediately buried and Alice is already on trial for poisoning the Duke. Yet Meltine has deduced that someone has been organizing the Duke's death and has investigated Madame Cullion. However, before she can find any evidence, the villains ensure that the Dayroth Duchy is completely removed from the Empire, consuming the entire mansion in fire. Meltine was unfazed, and she set out to find the Duke's scattered vassals in order to restore their family's honor. Through her mission, she happens to treat the third prince, who is seriously injured on the street, and blah blah blah, they fall in love and live happily ever after. However, in this novel, only the main characters have happy endings, and all of the minor people that helped them die, which frustrates Alice. Today, Maris informs Alice to go to the Duke's room as commanded by Cullion, but she is unaware that her husband is already exercising in his room. Well, during Kalis' meeting with Adolf, he agreed to keep his consciousness hidden because he needs to assemble all of his allies before confronting his stepmother. He also discovers that his, wifey is the eldest daughter of Count Pudri, who was sold off for the sake of their family. But Kalis is unconcerned because he believes that this Alice girl is trying to kill him. He then acts as if he's asleep as soon as Alice walks into his room, and he is understandably taken aback when she starts chatting with him and gushing over his body. She'll surely regret her babbling mouth in the future. While he is secretly listening to his so-called wife, he finds it strange that she continues to talk to him despite knowing that he's unconscious. Maris enters the room with a basin and towel and informs her that it is water and cloth to wash the Duke, causing Alice's face to flush as she realizes what her mother-in-law was referring to. The idea of scrubbing an adult man's bare body makes her malfunction, which makes Maris smirk because she figures Alice is surprised that she has to carry out tasks that servants normally do. Sorry, Maris, but this girl is fine with that and is simply overheating at the mere thought of having to wash the Duke's well-sculpted body. She then takes a brief glimpse at Kalis, and the buttonless shirt makes her go crazy, prompting our not-so-innocent girl to turn to prayer for guidance away from sins. Maris interrupts her, reminding her that it's late and time to get started, despite Alice's secret yearning to run away. While Alice is still contemplating, Maris starts touching the Duke, which worries her, so she instantly grabs Maris's hand and inquires as to what she's doing. Although Maris explains that she's removing the Duke's clothes for her to wash him, Alice still wonders if it is appropriate for her to trust such work with one of Madame Cullion's employees, and she begins to suspect if Madame Cullion is plotting something more with Maris. So Alice decides to do it by herself and orders Maris to leave, who is surprised by her actions. When she gazes upon the Duke, she experiences a persistent sense of discomfort, fully aware that she bears the sole responsibility for his well-being, even if she chooses to lie about washing him. Driven by her deep concern for the potential harm that could result from the insufficient care, she dedicates herself to the continuous task of washing the Duke's body. In order to maintain a smooth process, she decides to treat him like a sculpture, with her only responsibility being to carefully keep it clean. Softly, she delicately washes his body, yet a faint blush graces her cheeks as she steals a glance at him. As she carries on with her work, she actively engages in internal dialogue to stay focused. But what's funny about all of this is that my guy is awake and has to stay still. He needs an Oscar for this. After completely washing his upper body, she can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, admiring his captivating appearance. Alice is proud of her progress, so she reaches for his pants, but then she pauses, realizing it's not really right for her to do the task. She freaks out over what to do and where to begin, and she ends up crying as she blames Madame Cullion. However, she is determined to take care of him indefinitely, so she resolves to finish it to the very end. Right as she's on the verge of unfastening his pants, Adolf suddenly enters the room, effectively putting a halt to her actions. She freezes in place as their eyes meet, realizing she's in trouble as she releases her grip on the Duke's pants. The embarrassment I feel for this girl is really on a different level. Adolf was actually walking through the corridors when he overheard the servants talking about how the Duchess, who is currently tending to the Duke, and how she's washing his body right now. This news startled Adolf, forcing him to rush to the Duke's room while Alice gathers herself to avoid appearing suspicious. Just right in time for Mr. Butler. Alice then confronts the butler about his lack of etiquette, urging him to knock before entering, prompting him to apologize, but Maris interrupts their conversation, alleging that, as the butler, his actions are inappropriate. Alice knows that Cullion is already closely monitoring the butler, so she can't give Maris a chance to find faults in him. Alice resolves to help Adolf and informs Maris that there must be a solid reason for the butler to be in such a hurry, forcing Adolf to explain that hearing so late that she's washing the Duke all by herself makes him feel horrible. Alice accepts the reason for his acts, but this parasite, Maris, persists in informing Madame Cullion about Adolf, so she leaves the room. Following that, Alice is curious as to why Adolf hasn't left yet, preventing her from completing her cleaning of the Duke. She's really invested in cleaning him. Unexpectedly, Adolf proposes that he will carry on with washing the Duke, which surprises Alice because Madame Cullion specifically assigned her the task. In response, Adolf clarifies that he doesn't mean to completely take over the responsibility of caring for the Duke. Instead, he suggests that he will simply assist Alice as the task is physically demanding and causes her to perspire. She finds joy in not having to wash the Duke's lower body every day and happily leaves the rest of the task to him. Look at that little angel on her side celebrating. Not today, Satan. Not today. After everyone else leaves, Adolf discreetly informs the Duke, who is now completely drained from pretending to be unconscious for so long. If exhausted, then why so handsome? Adolf promptly expresses his regret for being late, while Kalis contemplates Alice's behavior of treating someone's body as if it were dirty. Having endured Madame Cullion's mistreatment and being forced into a marriage, Kalis initially sees Alice as someone who appears frightened and timid. However, after listening to her speak, he realizes that he will have to be careful as she turns out to be quite different from what he initially expected. Adolf then informs the Duke that he has already sent a letter to Baron Meltine, requesting that he send his daughter over as soon as possible, and that Madame Cullion has received information that Lady Meltine is visiting the capital. The Duke intends to begin moving in earnest once Lady Meltine arrives, and he instructs Adolf to be quiet until then. Adolf also informs the Duke that when he collapsed, Madame Cullion had been giving him some medicine for the Duke to take, but that medicine is now in Alice's care, and he is concerned that he cannot check what its contents is from now on. Adolf believes Dr. Helkin's remarkable poison-making abilities contributed to the Duke's collapse, so the Duke then orders him to bring Helkin to him. The Meltine family's carriage has arrived. Sienna Meltine is incredibly captivating, with her vibrant crimson hair that radiates warmth and her mesmerizing emerald eyes that reflect nature's beauty. Madame Cullion smiles as she greets Lady Meltine, but this girl is brave enough to ignore her and greet Alice instead, introducing herself to the new Duchess. Hope she treats our girl nicely. Lady Meltine's actions create a chilling atmosphere, causing Alice to panic as she anticipates Madame Cullion's reaction. So Alice decides to take action to ensure her survival, and apprehends Lady Meltine, explaining that she should have greeted the duchy's esteemed elders first, causing Lady Meltine to flinch. But the truth is, she's crying inside because she doesn't have any ill intentions. Lady Meltine then apologizes to Madame Cullion, admitting that she made a mistake by assuming the Duchess would be the acting head of the household in the Duke's absence. Madame Cullion graciously accepts the apology, reassuring Lady Meltine that the misunderstanding doesn't bother her, and extending an invitation for her to come inside and rest. On that day, Alice tells the Duke that she has encountered him twice, and will keep seeing him twice from then on. She persists in conversing with the Duke, which makes Helkin curious about why she bothers speaking when he's deep asleep and unable to hear anything. Alice sees nothing wrong with conversing with the Duke, and she even gushes about how radiant he appears after all her cleaning. However, Helkin informs her that the Duke's condition will worsen continuously, and that although he's still alive, the sleeping poison will slowly ravage his body, preventing any improvement in his complexion. As Alice gazes once more at the Duke's face, she notices his skin glow, leading her to suspect that it may be a result of the divine power she unleashed upon him. Curious, she then asks Helkin about the possibilities of employing heavenly power to relieve pain and cure diseases, and learns that the Duke will never awaken, making any treatment method ineffective. However, she is intrigued by how she heals the injury to the Duke's arm, which she witnessed firsthand. Anyway, she decides not to tell Helkin about her divine powers and just proceeds with the task of giving the Duke his medicine. She already pours the medicine into the Duke's mouth, remembering to let Helkin drink the remaining potion to confirm that he is indeed giving her a nutritional supplement, not poison. After warning him about his betrayal potential, she has him drink everything in front of her and is relieved that it's vitamins since he drinks it all at once. I salute that she didn't trust the doctor and made him drink it. That afternoon, while Helkin is strolling down the corridor, still engrossed with Alice's unusual behavior, he is shocked when Adolf appears in front of him and smiles innocently. They then head to the Duke's room, and Helkin begins to feel uneasy when Adolf informs the sleeping Duke of their presence, and he falls on his knees. Seeing the Duke rise from the bed, the Duke then raises his blade and slides it to Helkin's neck as he demands that he explain everything about the poison. Helkin tries to make it clear that he is not only following Madame Cullion's orders, he says he has no idea who will consume his poison and stresses that he has no intention to kill him. Helkin then pleads for his life, promises his loyalty, and says that he is knowledgeable about medicinal herbs and may be of use to him. Helkin continues to try to save his life when Adolf informs the Duke that Helkin produced the poison and knows how to treat it, urging the Duke to keep him for the time being, to which he quickly bows in gratitude. The Duke then discovers that Alice and Helkin have been administering his medicine for 4 days, which is strange as he has also been awake for 4 days. He also learns that he has been drinking nutritional supplements because Alice ordered Helkin to substitute the poison for something else, prompting the Duke to question Alice's true motives. Survival and, probably to see your sculpted body, Mr. Sleeping Beauty. The Duke then instructs Helkin to examine his physical state, and he is startled to learn that the Duke's poison level is low, as if by some miracle. Although the poison has not been totally detoxified, treatment is still possible, and he can prepare the antidote in a matter of days. The Duke then orders him to keep the fact that he is awake a secret from Madame Cullion and Alice, and to act as if he's carrying out Alice's orders as normal. Helkin trembles as he feels the chills from Kaelus's gaze and promises to follow his orders. Dr. Helkin, aka the Triple Agent. After Helkin leaves the room, Kaelus asks Adolf to examine his arm, and he is shocked to discover that his injury has vanished, leaving nothing but smooth skin. Kaelus tells Adolf that the injury had vanished when he awoke, but Adolf explains that it had existed 4 days before when he had given him medical assistance. Adolf also informs him that, in addition to him, Alice is the only person who paid him a visit, which leads Kaelus to believe she's related to how he awoke. During their walk, Lady Maltine expresses her happiness at discovering that they're both from the West and her desire to grow closer to Alice, all while wearing a smile. However, Alice can see through Lady Maltine's insincere words. She knows that Lady Maltine can be kind and just to her own people, but also ruthless towards her enemies, including Alice herself as a member of the Madame Cullion people. Alice suspects that Lady Maltine either wants to gather information about Madame Cullion or use her as a trap. As she ponders her next move, Alice contemplates whether to play the naive and timid role like the original Alice, or reveal that she's not that foolish. She decides to combine the two reactions, so she smiles innocently, expressing how happy she is to become the lady's friend, and continues to describe how Madame Cullion was extremely vigilant yesterday, forcing her to point out the lady's mistakes. Since Sienna is happy to keep being friends and occasionally wants to chat, it's clear that our girl has passed her test. Alice intends to play the innocent card and help the female lead out by subtly giving information about Cullion, rather than being perceived as a threat. Now that she's alone, Alice intends to escape the duchy before the all-out war between the protagonist and the villains begin, prompting her to recall her divine powers. So she reads a temple book and learns that across the empire, priests under the temple's care are protected by a special law that forbids even nobility from interfering with them, with the Pope being the only one who can judge them. It comforts her that Madame Cullion cannot harm her if she becomes a priest. But when she reads that only pure people may qualify, her plan falls through considering that she's married. However, she is still pure, and she believes that her qualifications for priesthood are unclear, so she resolves to visit the temple to ask about the procedure. Alice's next problem is that she is certain that Madame Cullion will not allow her to leave. But with her brilliant mind, I am confident that she will find a solution. Alice is still trying to make sense of things when Helkin unexpectedly knocks on the door, catching her off guard. She finds out that the butler is currently busy, so Helkin, who is free, steps in as a replacement. She then explains that all Helkin needs to do is wash the Duke's body, with her taking care of the upper half and him taking care of the rest. Kalis Dayroth is the youngest duke and knight to have ever marched triumphantly across the battlefield. Helkin frequently hears unbelievable stories about the duke, one of which describes how the sight of him slashing his enemies' throats resembles that of a savage beast. Yet today, Helkin witnesses the beast looking so peaceful, which makes him concerned about Alice, who continues to touch the duke's body. Helkin offers to assist her, but Alice insists that she can do it on her own, comparing the delicate task to cleaning a valuable sculpture. She looks downcast as she delicately wipes Kalis's hand, claiming that she's lost her interest in him. It seems more like she's trying to suppress her feelings because she knows Kalis will die. However, her words prompts Helkins to cough even more, raising Alice's suspicions that something is wrong with him. Then she confronts him and demands to know whether he's concealing anything from her, leaving Helkins at a loss for words. The Duke, anticipating the impending disaster, swiftly opens his eyes as a warning while Alice isn't looking, causing Helkin to scream as if he had just seen a ghost, much to Alice's surprise. Can this guy sleep at night? He knows too many secrets. Fortunately, Adolf enters the room just in time to save Helkin, so Alice allows Adolf to complete the duty while she and Helkin leave. Once they leave the room, the Duke lets out a frustrated sigh, expressing his annoyance with Dr. Helkin's slow movements. But what irritates him more is Alice's comments that she doesn't care about him. Nah, he's just upset that he got friend-zoned. No, sculpture-zoned. Kalis realizes that every time she comes to mind, he experiences a sharp discomfort in his throat. Her consistent greetings, peculiar self-conversations, and defiance of Madame Cullion by replacing the poison all greatly disturb him. Given that she will not give him the poison, he's unable to understand what is going through her mind because she is playing the role of a daughter-in-law, and he believes that if she can deceive Madame Cullion, she can also deceive him. My guy has some trust issues, which I understand since Alice appears stupid yet smart enough to play along. Anyway, he inquires about Sienna's whereabouts and wonders how she looks, as it has been 10 years since he last saw his confident and bright little cousin. Adolf then proudly assures him that she appeared to be highly loyal and tenacious, with no traces of timidity, even in front of Madame Cullion. Kalis smiles, knowing Sienna has grown up well, and instructs Adolf to bring her to him at dawn. As Sienna quietly makes her way to Kalis's room that night, he smiles as he greets her, while Sienna, overcome with emotion, is relieved that her older cousin is alive and well. Aw, they're like siblings. They quickly get down to business, and Sienna is all fired up to help him in any way she can, making Kalis feel at ease that he finally has someone he can trust. He needs his knights back to uncover the truth about who put him in a coma, so he asks Sienna, who is a master magician, to go to the temple for a mission. Sienna, Madame Cullion, and Alice are enjoying tea in the garden the following day when our girl gets caught in the middle of their verbal confrontation. Listening to them argue, Alice can't help but find it amusing that Sienna is coming out on top while Cullion can do nothing except grit her teeth in frustration. Alice then groans silently since she still has no idea how to get to the temple, when Sienna, as if hearing her thoughts, declares that she wants to go there. During her conversation with Kalis the night before, he instructed her to make an acceptable explanation to go to the temple, sneak down Rostay Street, and find the Dawn Star Inn. After that, Kalis handed her a slip of paper and told her that once she locates the inn, she should simply present it to an employee, and he will take care of everything else. That being said, Sienna is now in her acting mode and begins crying as she informs Cullion that she wishes to pray at the temple for the Duke's health, which Cullion doesn't like, but is surprised when Alice decides to cut her off, stating that Cullion should allow the young lady. Alice also begins acting, claiming that she may accompany Sienna to the temple, which frustrates Cullion. And I know that if Sienna hadn't been around, she would have yelled at Alice right away. This is Alice's chance, so she has no choice but to be bold and ask Sienna to leave for a moment to talk about private affairs with her mother-in-law, which Sienna agrees to. When the redhead girl exits, Cullion's real colors emerge, and she begins ranting at Alice, telling her that she should have prevented Sienna from leaving the house. Alice, on the other hand, is so used to Cullion's nasty side that she just explains she'll keep an eye on Sienna since if they don't let her go, the lady may begin to suspect them of keeping dark secrets. On top of that, Sienna may write a letter to her family, prompting the Baron to personally assess the Duke's condition. Cullion begins chewing her finger and agrees that if news spreads that the Duke is ill, Dayroth's close families will undoubtedly step in, so she eventually permits Alice to accompany Sienna, which makes Alice very happy. She may appear innocent, but our girl is actually pretty clever. Even her nasty stepmother fell for her trick. I love her. Adolf tells the Duke right away that Sienna and Alice are going to the temple to pray, which leaves Kalis wondering what Alice is up to. When he told Sienna to go to the temple the night before, he also advised her to be cautious around the Duchess. But all he got was a puzzled look from his cousin, who said Alice was foolish and naive. She began describing Alice's pink hair, golden eyes, and tiny physique, claiming that she was like a little puppy, which Kalis found difficult to believe given that this was the same girl who deceived both Cullion and Helkin. This only suggests that the Duchess is concealing her genuine identity. Yet when Sienna asked him if there was anything she should know about the Duchess, he lied and just told her to be watchful. After realizing he didn't tell Sienna the whole truth, Kalis starts to wonder why he's trying to save Alice from trouble in the first place. To straighten out his poor judgment regarding Alice, he resolves to uncover her true identity today. When Alice comes to the Duke's room today, Adolf happily informs her that he has already bathed the Duke's body and offers to wash him from now on. Secretly, of course, so Madame Cullion won't find out. This surprises Alice, but she accepts, and after discussing their little secret, Adolf leaves the room while she sits next to Kalis. Alice understands that Adolf is attempting to separate her from the Duke, since, in the eyes of the butler, she is simply Madame Cullion's person. She's a little bitter now that there's a boundary between them, and while gently running her fingers through Kalis's hair, she confesses that she has become attached to being in his company. I understand this isn't love yet, but my girl is slowly falling for a sleeping beauty. She also believes that keeping their distance is for the best, since she fears that being near him will cause her to feel unbearably hurt when news of his death gets out. So she mumbles her plan to leave the Duke's mansion and resolves to stop thinking about Kalis. When she leaves, Kalis is even more puzzled, realizing that this Alice girl is trying to run away from his estate. Although they haven't had a real conversation yet, I can sense the chemistry between these two. I'm excited for them! The day has arrived for Sienna and Alice to go to the temple, and Our Lady looks adorable as she acts like a child going out with her mother. I can't blame her, considering this is her first time out since she transmigrated. When they arrive at the massive temple, a priest welcomes Alice warmly, and she understands it's because of her rank as a duchess. Plus, temples have always been particularly kind to the nobility because they donate so much. Sienna then requests a separate prayer room where she may pray alone, and Alice senses Sienna is working on something, prompting her to recall Madame Cullion's orders to keep a watch on Sienna. But, oh well, sorry not sorry, but our girl doesn't give a hoot. So she allows Sienna and even cheers her on in her effort to get rid of Cullion. Alice then enters a private prayer room as well and decides to read a book about divine power, where she discovers that, while divine power is one of God's blessings, not everyone possesses equal amounts of power. Priests are classified as novices if they can just emit a warm light and heal minor wounds, senior priests if they can heal severe injuries, and elite priests if they can treat internal injuries or heal someone instantly. Given that she cured the Duke's already festered wound, she believes she's qualified to be a senior priest. Yet the thought of having a big responsibility plus the stress that comes with overseeing the nobility is too much for our girl to bear. She only wants to live peacefully, so she resolves to hide her powers from now on. Suddenly, a low-ranking priest with short purple hair enters the room to offer her a cup of tea. And seeing this gorgeous angel in front of her, Alice wishes to be like her. After that, Alice decides to ask the young priest a question about her married friend's desire to become a priest who maintained her purity, which prompts the priest to tell the story of a woman who, out of the blue, gained heavenly powers and became a priest. In short, everyone who has attained holiness, regardless of their qualifications, can become a priest, including married people, which relieves Alice greatly. Alice meets the right priest because this girl turns out to be in charge of record keeping and claims to be able to assist Alice's friend in need. She then hands Alice an application form for becoming a priest, and says that her friend must put down all of the abilities she possesses, and that the temple will then conduct a test to assess their efficacy, following which her registration will be processed. After thanking her for the full details, Alice inquires about the young priest's name. And guess what? It's just like her Hari name. Her name is Violet. When they arrive home, the evil stepmother is waiting at the door, cranky that they have returned late, and demands that the two ladies go upstairs to rest right away since they have been through a lot today because of her useless son. Gosh, how dare she call Kalis her son? Well, she's tripping over her own foot as Sienna innocently informs her that the restoration of the Dayroth family standing is all thanks to the Duke, while Alice on the back is impressed by Sienna's daring to speak up and always wins. I'm confident Sienna and Alice will become friends once they realize they're on the same side. After the lady walks upstairs to rest, Cullion demands a report from Alice, who reveals that the two of them merely prayed and that Sienna never left the prayer room until it was time to go home. Still, it's only the first day in the temple, so Cullion's orders remain unchanged. Alice must ensure Sienna isn't doing anything odd. After Alice accepts, this evil lady smirks and tells her that it's time for the Duke to drink his medicine. Yup, time for hubby to drink his vitamins. As Alice proceeds to administer the vitamins to the Duke, she sits down next to him, oblivious to the fact that the application slips out of her pocket. She should have secured that paper! Feeling helpless, she clings to his hand, burdened by the guilt of knowing she must leave to protect herself, yet unable to change his unavoidable fate. While still feeling the warmth of Alice's touch on his hand, he seems a little uneasy that she didn't greet him in the usual way. He had assumed that Alice was ecstatic about her plans to leave his mansion, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that her voice carried a hint of sadness earlier. He can even sense the change in her voice, huh? Interesting progress. After that, with Adolf as a witness, Helkin hands Kalis a finished antidote, but warns him that it is very strong. The Duke is confused by this, so the doctor fumbles through an explanation about how painful detoxification is, and how the painkiller he gave him earlier and the vitamins won't help much. However, Kalis takes the antidote from Helkin's hand anyway. Instead of the pain, Kalis is worried about being imprisoned in the darkness once more, thus the cure is of the utmost importance to him. Just then, they hear a knock on the door, and Sienna enters with her vibrant red hair that seems to radiate in the darkness. The sight of her leaves the doctor feeling flustered, unable to comprehend just how stunning Sienna truly is. But before he can continue staring, an invisible force strikes him in the head, prompting him to realize it was Sienna, who then reminds him of the basic rule of not staring at people for too long. Helkin is amazed that Sienna can use magic without even casting a magic circle, which only confirms that our novel's main lead is a high circle mage, so all he can do is stare down in shame as he apologizes to the woman. Following that, Duke Kalis, who is standing by his powerful cousin, orders him to go, making Helkin frightened and prompting him to comply. You two make such a powerful duo. However, it's a little distracting that none of your clothes have buttons, sir. Not that I'm complaining in the slightest. Sienna then tells Kalis what happened today, informing him that she met James, and that, after showing him the paper, the man immediately told her that she would meet Mr. Taysiri at the inn tomorrow. It is great news, but the Duke persists in asking her if she wasn't caught leaving the temple, prompting Sienna to explain that she is positive because she used illusion magic in the prayer room to make it appear as if she was sitting there praying, while the real her left, which impresses Kalis. Following their meeting and Sienna's exit from his room, Kalis makes the decision to consume the antidote. Concerned about him, Adolf plans to keep a close eye on him throughout the night, but Kalis stresses against it, so he departs. On the other hand, our girl has spent the entire night circling the estate in search of her misplaced application form. The fact that Cullion remains silent throughout the evening suggests that she does not have it, so Alice assumes that the Duke's room is where the form is. With nothing but her light, she enters the room and begins to explore. Eventually, she discovers it lying under Kalis's bed. However, she wasn't expecting to hear a voice coming from the bed, prompting her to investigate. To her shock, she discovers that her husband is in pain, causing her to panic. At long last, this time they may actually be able to meet. Alice panics and rushes outside to find Dr. Helkin, leaving her light and form on the bedside table. She is panting as she storms into Helkin's workroom, and the poor guy is pulled by the collar to the Duke's room. When they arrive and Helkin sees the Duke's condition, he is convinced that it's only the effects of the antidote, but he just informs our sharp girl that the sleeping poison has spread throughout the Duke's body. However, Alice looks at him sternly, wanting to confirm that he hasn't poisoned the Duke recently. This prompts the doctor to clarify that his medicine works exactly as the Duke is experiencing it. Alice gives up and accepts that they cannot do anything to alleviate the Duke's suffering, so she dismisses him. Whereas Helkin is positive that the Duke will be alright in 2 days, though he can't disclose this to her. She can't endure hearing his agonizing cries, But she knows that even if she uses heavenly power to alleviate his suffering, Kalis will not survive his tragic ending. But she couldn't help but take the Duke's hand as he cries out in pain, and she starts to pray earnestly that the gods will heal him. Her divine powers instantly fill the room with light, calming the Duke's expression and leaving Alice looking exhausted. The Duke is drowning in the darkness again, but just like the last time, he opens his eyes as soon as he sees the brilliant light that confuses him. He then notices someone on his bed and discovers a girl sleeping on it. However, as he takes a close look at the girl, he notices her pink hair and recognizes that this is none other than Alice, who looks just like a puppy as Sienna described her. This is his first time seeing her, so say hello to your wife, mister. He then wonders why Alice is sleeping in his room and realizes that his body feels light and painless, just like when he first woke up from a coma. Thinking back, Adolf had previously informed him that Alice was the only person who had left his room the day he woke up, and this time, he wakes up pain-free with Alice by his side. Given that it has happened twice, Kalis is convinced that it is not a coincidence and acknowledges Alice as the person who saved him. Afterwards, he holds Alice, who is sound asleep, in his arms, and he knows, just by feeling her warmth, that it must be divine power. After all, she healed his body in an instant, and only the Pope could have done it. With this information in hand, the Duke is determined to hold on to Alice at all costs, as he needs her power to ensure that he is never trapped in darkness again. Whoopsie! You can kiss your dreams of becoming a priest goodbye, sweetie. Kalis then tucks her into bed and discovers her application form on the table, which he crumpled for the reason that he truly intends to have Alice stay with him. I know, this isn't love just yet, but we'll get there, you guys. The next morning, Alice feels very stressed out since she is sleeping close to the Duke, but seeing that he appears to be fine now makes her feel better. She decides to continue to take care of him until she leaves, at least to ensure that he does not experience pain in his dreams. Imagine how relieved she'll be when she finds out she actually has healed the Duke. Today, Alice and Sienna are returning to the temple, but Alice remains worried about her misplaced application form. However, the fact that Cullion has said nothing to her indicates that no one in the estate found the form, and Alice realizes just how dangerous her plan was. When they arrive at the temple, a guard guides Alice off the carriage, and our girl is surprised by the worker's loving voice, but she dismisses the thought and enters the temple. Alice is now in the prayer room, continuing to read books about divine power, and she discovers that if one practices their divine power, their ability can level up beyond merely healing power, developing a skill of self-defense and even attacking. Imagining that she can use her power on both Cullion and Maris makes her extremely thrilled. I would love to see that as well. Violet then excitedly goes into her room and asks if she wants to go out again today, to which our girl eagerly agrees. The temple occasionally opens its doors to feed the poor and heal the sick, and since Alice has been able to regularly visit the temple, she decided to volunteer at the Poverty Relief Center. Although we know that Alice is genuinely nice, this is all part of her plan to draw nearer to Prion, a senior priest with lush golden hair, whom she has her sights set on. According to what Alice has read in the novel, Prion hails from humble beginnings as well, but he would rise to the position of Pope and bring about much-needed reforms inside the temple due to his extraordinary divine power. However, owing to Violet, Alice has learned information about Prion that was not addressed in the novel, namely that Madame Cullion and Prion are not on good terms. This is because when Lady Cullion visited the temple to offer prayers, she was shoved by a poor man, prompting them to go to court. Cullion refused to let the person go, and as a result, the poor man was put to death, which Prion fiercely opposed, but the court sided with the nobles, and everyone from the religious community to social circles is aware of this. With this information, Alice decides to cancel her plan to submit the priest enrollment application, because she is confident that the news will reach Cullion and prevent her from becoming a priest, since she knows too much about her secret. Worse, Cullion may even kill her in the process. And after all of her reading, she discovers that no one can be forced to become a priest if they possess divine power. So instead of aspiring to be a priest, she intends to make Prion an ally. Meanwhile, Sienna has sneaked out of the temple with the guard from earlier, and as soon as they reach the inn, the guard takes off his ring and transforms into our charming Duke Kalis. Hold just a second. Alice likes his voice before she even realizes it's his? Soulmates! His assistant, Tejiri, greets him cheerfully while the commander of his knights, David, bursts into tears, relieved to see the Duke alive, which surprises Sienna because she has heard that this guy is the invisible grizzly bear of the battlefield. Yes, the big ones are always the softies. The Duke wastes no time in announcing that he intends to move their plans to kick out his stepmother as early as possible. David reports to the Duke that practically all of his knights have already assembled, while Taejiri, who has been tasked with investigating Madame Cullion, discovers that she's been involved in a number of unlawful activities. One of these is bribing Marquise Birkin, who is well known for soliciting favors from the Emperor to ensure that Edelm, Cullion's son, gets elevated to the Academy's top position. The fact that Cullion poisoned him should have been enough to get rid of her, but they have to gather evidence nonetheless because of the present Emperor of the Pentagon Empire. The Emperor is corrupt, and he is threatened by Kaelus's Black Knights, whose talents far exceed those of the Imperial Knight, as well as Kaelus's growing fame, which threatens his authority. The Duke believes that the Crown Prince is the Empire's only hope, but he is now unconscious, so the second prince, who is known to be immoral, becomes the next candidate for the future Emperor. Kaelus has made it clear that he will not support the second prince, which must have disappointed the Emperor, and the fact that the Emperor permitted Cullion to let him marry an unknown noble family without any confirmation suggests that the Emperor wishes him to crumble. Back to our girl, Alice and Violet are busy assisting those in need with food, but her plan to get closer to Prion is not working because he is busy mending the sick. Just then, two little kids approach her and ask for some bread, and Alice cheerfully gives them soup, which delights the little one, who runs to take the dish. The kid has no idea how hot it is and is now wailing from a burned hand. Alice asks for assistance in healing the child, but everyone is too busy, so she chooses to heal the child herself and requests that they keep it a secret. The two children's eyes brighten as they promise not to tell anyone, and they leave with food in their hands, unaware that Prion has witnessed her using her divine powers. Alice intends to reveal her powers to him later, but it is what it is, so she takes this opportunity to request a private conversation with him. Prion leads her to a less busy alley, prompting Alice to hastily explain that she wants to become a priestess and that she will need his assistance. Prion believes Alice is simply concerned since she is married, so he explains that she can still become a priest regardless, prompting Alice to begin her act, claiming that her mother-in-law, Madame Cullion, will undoubtedly block her from becoming a priestess. Seeing how he reacts to hearing Cullion's name, Alice continues, claiming that she was abandoned by her own family and that her marriage is arranged, so she begs the high priest to help her start a new life, and as expected, Prion pledges to assist her in any way. Smart, but I don't think your husband will let you, Missy. Alice is so pleased that she grabs the high priest's hand to thank him, making him blush and ask her to let go. He then suggests that they talk about ways to keep Madame Cullion from preventing Alice from becoming a priest. As they walk inside, they are oblivious of Kaelus's presence, who is surprised to learn that the high priest will assist Alice. He believes that if the high priest supports Alice, even if Cullion puts pressure on them, the temple will still help her. Plus, the high priest also hates the madam, leading him to believe that Alice has indeed found the perfect person to work with. Though Kaelus knows that clinging onto her isn't the right thing to do, the thought of letting her go feels impossible, and he's willing to sacrifice everything just to keep her close. That sounds like something a red flag would say. After a few days, Alice learns from Madame Cullion that they'll be inviting high priests to the estate. Despite their holy power having no effect on Kaelus's condition, Madame Cullion makes an effort to appear as though she's taking care of the Duke for everyone to see. This is why she invites the high priests over every month, and they cannot decline her due to her unwavering large-scale temple donations. The following day, Alice shares all the details with the high priest, Prion, who quickly determines that it's an excellent chance for him to personally visit the estate. He then smiles and suggests that she reveal her intentions to become a priest on that day, which she instantly approves. However, when the day finally arrives for her to leave, she feels bad for the sleeping Kaelus, yet she breathes out, reassuring herself to release any lingering connections. She's snapped out of her thoughts when the maid knocks on her door, letting her know that the high priest will be arriving soon, and before she leaves the room, she glances at Kaelus, expressing her regret for leaving him. Soon after, the temple's carriage arrives, and as the high priest steps out one by one, Madame Cullion is surprised to see the high priest Prion. Kaelus, the high priest, greets her, but she apprehends him for bringing someone unexpected with him. High priest Prion quickly extends a personal greeting to her, but her mood remains unchanged, causing our lovely guy to smile as he mockingly informs her that her son is still in critical condition, but she still acts unconcerned, which infuriates her. Love how he says it innocently while this old hag is getting high blood pressure. To keep her from reacting, Prion clarifies that since she has been regularly contributing money to the temple, he promises to do everything he can to convey her efforts to their god. He then turns to Alice and smiles, urging her to guide them to the Duke's room. Alice watches in awe as the priests conduct a healing session in the Duke's bedroom. The room is alive with the glowing energy of the High Priests, and she can't help but notice how much warmer and brighter it feels when they all come together to channel their holy power. After that, Madame Cullion quickly whispers to High Priest Halis that she'll send him the donations, which he gladly accepts and declares that they'll be going. However, Prion abruptly interrupts, stating that they have another task to complete, which leads him to explain that he came to the duchy to bring a new priest back with him, prompting Alice to step up and express her desire to become a priest, which shocks everyone. Alice goes on to reveal that she can use holy power, likes to test it, and wants to spend the rest of her life serving God, dedicating her daily prayers to the Duke and her mother-in-law. However, Madame Cullion starts to shake with fury, shouting at her that she can never become a priest. She wonders who instilled that silly idea in her mind and rushes to her as if she's completely going insane, catching Alice off guard. Just in time for Prion to block her, leading Madame Cullion to remind him to move aside, as he is getting in the way of their family's issue. However, Prion insists that Alice's desire to become a priest signifies that the matter now extends beyond just the duchy. As the tension rises, Alice worries that the High Priest will face the majority of the blame, leading her to step in and explain that she specifically sought High Priest Prion's assistance and pleads with Madame Cullion to permit her. However, it only fuels Madame Cullion's anger, making her want to slap Alice right away. But everyone freezes as they hear a sound coming from the bed, and they're all stunned to see the Duke open his eyes. The Duke then sits on the bed, prompting a wave of reactions from everyone, which makes Madame Cullion's eyes widen in astonishment. Our very own Sleeping Beauty has finally graced us with his presence! Kalis then inquires coldly if Alice is the Duchess, forcing Madame Cullion to stutter and explain that after he collapsed, she had to take over the duchy and bring in Alice as his wife to help her care for him. Then, High Priest Prion steps in, asserting that the Duchess has expressed her desire to become a priest. This elicits a response from everyone, but Kalis silences them by instructing Prion to come back in a month. He informs him that he is currently confused and expects his condition to stabilize within that month, allowing them to understand the Duchess's decision by then. Okay, Mr. Best Actor. He then lets his stepmother, Sienna, and Adrian leave, claiming he wants to chat with the Duchess as husband and wife. Sir, that sneaky smile screams, "I can make you stay, and I am so ready for it!" The words husband and wife echo in our poor girl's ears like Kalis is preparing to grill her at any second. And for the first time in forever, Alice would prefer to be with Cullion than in the same room as the Duke. Sorry, dear, but even your evil mother-in-law decides to follow Kalis's orders, leaving her alone with Kalis. So she decides to get down on her knees and begs Kalis not to kill her, while explaining that she's not Cullion's puppet and that she never followed the madam's order to kill him. However, she is taken aback when she sees Kalis offer his hand to her while calmly stating that he knows she's not a bad person. Look at that beautiful face! Oh my goodness, sir! Can your broad shoulders fit through doors? Whoops, I got distracted. Anyway, they decide to take a seat, and Kalis quickly straightens out the misunderstanding and swears that he has no intention of killing her, because he knows that it is only through her holy power that he has regained consciousness. Alice should be relieved by the news, but she's disturbed that Kalis is aware of her holy powers. And now that she thinks about it, it has been a month since she used her holy power to heal his scar, implying that he has also been conscious for that time. This is a nightmare because, oh my goodness, the thought of him catching her swooning over his, spectacular physique while washing that dazzling body is just too much. And let's not forget those moments when she wasn't exactly ladylike as she insulted Madame Cullion and Maris. Thankfully, Kalis appears to be embarrassed as well, so he decides to lie and claims that he was only in and out of consciousness and has only now regained full consciousness. Hearing that makes our girlie sigh with relief, but she questions why he pretended not to know anything earlier, prompting him to explain that he only did it for her sake, as having holy power strong enough to heal someone who's already dying is extraordinary. Only Prion has that much power in the Empire, so if the priest discovers she has it, she will earn both supporters and enemies, and she may even become involved in a power struggle as a result. After explaining this, our guy wastes no time in asking Alice to stay by his side. But our girl shoots him down with a solid no. Kalis tries to persuade her by offering her money, power, or whatever she wants, but she is adamant about leaving the estate. Money and power don't work on her, so Kalis decides to lean forward and offer his body as compensation, and my guy says that while smiling charmingly. Oh dear, I would have said yes immediately. Our girl almost gives in, but she mentally slaps herself and refuses since Madame Cullion will surely kill her if she stays. Yup, staying alive over love life is still the better choice. Kalis announces to her that he'll be kicking out Cullion soon, and in an almost desperate manner expresses his hope that she'll step up and take responsibility since he is not yet fully recovered. He then grabs her hand and swears never to put her in danger, but their talk ends when Adrian knocks on the door. That evening, Alice slips out of her room to see Helkin and asks if the Duke really has fully recovered, as she is concerned that Kalis will pass out before he can kick out Cullion. Upon entering the doctor's room, Alice notices the chaos and immediately thinks of the madam, who must have been the one who stormed in and became so enraged that the Duke recovered. Poor Helkin stands up, still looking messy, making her feel somehow awful for him. Regardless, she becomes serious and asks if the Duke has truly recovered. And after learning that while a full recovery will take time, the Duke will not fall into a coma again, which is bad news for Helkin because the Duke may kill him at any time, while Alice is relieved that she'll be safe for the month, but also worries that the Duke will not let her go after that. Both of them sigh as they ponder their own troubles, but before leaving the room, Alice decides to give Helkin advice. If he wants to live, he should cease working for Madame Cullion and confess all of his sins to the Duke. Meanwhile, Sienna is startled when Kalis tells her that Alice's prayers saved him, and he even claims to have seen God's holy light while Alice was praying. For the time being, he decides not to inform anyone about Alice's holy power, but he wants everyone to know that she is the one who saved him. Sienna had assumed that our sweet girlie was just a clueless bunny, but Kalis tells her that Alice has some award-winning acting talents, and that Alice was not Cullion's person in the first place. After updating Sienna on Alice, he asks her to rest, and shortly after, Helkin, who still has scratches all over his face, arrives sweating and kneeling since he's late. Our triple agent has a tough life, but that's what comes with almost killing a Duke. Helkin then explains that he was late because he chatted with Alice, and he can't help but smile as he thinks about how Alice still gave him advice when she herself is in a bad situation. But whoopsie, doctor, it is not a good idea to smile while talking about someone's wife because Mr. Hubby is ready to kill you. How does that saying go again? One smile for my dear makes the doctor disappear? Helkin panics and claims that Alice paid him a visit because she was concerned about Kalis and had inquired about his condition, which calms Kalis down. Back to business, Kalis informs Dr. Helkin that they will visit the Imperial Palace in a week to check on someone who has ingested poison, which the doctor immediately recognizes as the First Prince, because it is widely known that the First Prince has not woken up in years due to poisoning. Then, because Kalis is sure that Madame Cullion will use him for another evil scheme, he gives Helkin a magical device that can record audio. After healing the First Prince and providing the Duke with evidence regarding the Madam, Helkin is 100% certain that this is his only chance for survival. Thus, he is more than willing to follow orders. The next morning, Alice wakes up sighing on her balcony, only to be greeted by a cute, cheerful new maid named Aileen, whom Kalis himself had hired. This is the first time someone has prepared everything for her, and she is very moved by Aileen's sincerity in serving her. At last! No Maris means one less source of drama to deal with. While walking to the dining area, Alice is greeted by Sienna, but the morning is ruined when grumpy old hag Cullion shows up, who is enraged that Alice has a new maid. She glares at Aileen and states that as the estate's master, she does not grant her permission to work for Alice, so she must kneel before her. Gosh, this old hag really has no chill. Are you going through menopause, lady? Of course, Alice will not let anything terrible happen to her new maid, so she requests the madam not to punish Aileen, and Sienna agrees. This just enrages the madam, who lifts her hand and prepares to slap our girl. But to everyone's shock, Sienna steps in to defend Alice and ends up getting a heavy slap herself. As our novel's main lead glares at the madam, the old hag flinches, but just as the situation is about to get out of hand, Adrian walks in, and Madame Cullion takes the opportunity to run upstairs. That was a total girl crush moment. As soon as the witch leaves, Alice checks on Sienna and is horrified to see that her cheek is severely swollen. She begins yapping because she can't believe the madam hit Sienna's gorgeous face, which causes the red-haired girl to chuckle and explain that she took the hit because she figures Alice may go flying if she were the one to get struck. Excuse me? What in the name of science is this chemistry between the two? Anyway, Alice requests that they go somewhere where no one can see them so that she can treat her swelling cheek secretly. After healing Sienna's cheek, Alice finds out that the Duke covered for her, stating that her prayers had healed him and without mentioning her holy power. Sienna then apologizes for being skeptical of her and shyly asks if they can be friends. Meanwhile, Madame Cullion is having a fit in her room because she can't believe Alice and Sienna are opposing her just a day after Kalis awakened. Rhonda, the head maid, suggests that because the Duke is not suspicious of Alice, the madam should bring her back on her side and that they could exploit Alice's weakness to force her to comply. This prompts the madam to remember Alice's weakness. Her family, the Fodry County. Sir, when you kick this mad woman out, please include Anaconda, Rhonda, or whatever the head maid's name is. It's been a week and our girl has heard whispers from the estate about Madame Cullion being forced out soon. But what gets Alice uneasy is how quiet the mansion remains. However, all changes when Aileen informs her that her family has just arrived at the estate. Instead of greeting his daughter, her father shouts at her for even considering becoming a priest. Count Rocky, who now becomes a fatty after selling his own daughter to the dukedom, is outraged. Alice's mother is crying because she's not repaying Madame Cullion's kindness, and her brother Eric looks at her disappointed. Something is really wrong with this family. Alice remains silent, but she knows without a doubt that the madam must have threatened her family to cut off their financial support. However, when the count orders her to beg for the madam's forgiveness, she snaps and confronts them for selling her, fully aware that the madam intends to order her to kill the Duke. Yes, go on, babe, tell them! Her father instantly urges her to lower her voice to make sure the Duke does not hear her, and this time he takes her hand, demanding she not abandon her family. Sorry, not sorry, but Alice slaps her father's hand away, reminding him that they were the ones who abandoned her first. And now that the Duke is awake, she has no intention of ever assisting the madam with whatever wicked schemes she has planned. After that, she makes her parents' jaws drop when she asks them to go while smiling sweetly, hoping to never see them again. Serve them right! However, Alice gets grabbed by her brother, who yells at her and orders her to kneel, prompting her to recall the real Alice's traumatizing memories of being bullied by him. Eric figures he has the upper hand now, but his mouth drops as Alice mocks him for wanting to be a knight and suggests he take a different path. You know, since he's pathetic? This makes Eric's face flush with shame, and he yells out his sister's name. But Alice corrects him again, this time declaring that she is now Dearuth, not Fodry. Eric can't believe Alice can raise her voice now, so he raises his hand to hit her. But everyone in the room gasps when the Duke suddenly appears. Mr. Husband quickly confronts Eric, furious for attempting to hit the Duchess. He then shoots him a menacing glare, labeling him a young master of a nameless noble family. Kalis' piercing gaze drains Eric of all his strength, sending him falling to the ground as the Count and Countess rush to his side. Sir, how about a slap? Just one slap! After that, Kalis' mood suddenly changes to that of an innocent, sweet-looking husband as he returns to Alice and asks if she needs any help, making our girl pause for a moment to reflect that her family never apologizes, so she should at least get a little revenge for the original Alice. So, with a confident tone, she requests that the Duke expel the Fodry family from the Dearuth estate and never allow them to return. Her request is the Duke's command, so the knights drag them away while they continue to call Alice, and ew, Eric now even calls her my sister. Crazy how their attitude has changed now that they can't manipulate our girl. When they leave, Alice thanks Kalis, but she hopes he does not ask for anything in return, such as asking her to stay. Dear, my guy does not need to take advantage of the situation because all he needs to do is flash you his lovely smile or remind you that you can have whatever you want, such as his body. I'm really glad he's not forcing her to stay, but rather trying to charm her with his beauty. Anyway, he wonders if expelling her family from the duchy will be enough, implying that he can destroy them entirely if she wishes. which really shocks her and prompts her to respond that what they did is more than enough. Now that's done, Alice mentions that she'll take a rest, leaving our guy feeling a bit let down. So he gently holds her hand, kisses it, and offers her a warm, affectionate smile. That kiss and smile are too much for our girl, so she quickly zooms away, flustered. This guy knows how to tease too. Cutie. After Alice leaves, Kalis directs Adrian to make sure the Duchess's dinner is extra special tonight, and orders him to find out where Eric is working as a knight, as he swears to revoke Eric of his title. Okay, no slap, but this will do. Kalis flinches a bit when Adrian brings up whether he has feelings for the Duchess, since he seems to treat her differently from everyone else. Kalis laughs and calls love a silly emotion, since because of love, his mother's life was shattered while his father ruined countless lives in the name of love. He has seen countless individuals recklessly risk their lives for the sake of love, leading him to believe that love is an empty and meaningless feeling, so he vowed that he will never fall in love. Oh, just you wait. You'll be head over heels for our girl before you know it. Kalis then informs Adrian that Alice saved his life, so it's only normal for him to do so much for her, prompting Adrian to bow and admit that he said something unnecessary. However, Kalis wonders why his heart is racing, and he suspects it's because he has never thought of someone special before. He then tries to convince himself that his emotion is caused by his fear of losing Alice's holy power. Sadly, that was indeed the case, and this isn't a love-at-first-sight story. The next day, Madame Cullion loses her temper when she discovers that Kalis has a meeting with the Emperor. She hurls things at Maris, blaming her for the delayed information, prompting Maris to fall to her knees and apologize. Her rage grows as she realizes that her strategy to entice Alice back to her side has failed because Count Fodry has been chased out by Kalis. Suddenly, her personal maid reminds her that she still has someone she can employ. When Kalis gets to the Imperial Palace, he tells Dr. Helkin to stay and wait for him before heading off to greet the Emperor. Kalis then recognizes the guy standing alongside the Emperor as Mechtren Vulcan, the Emperor's right-hand man who has served as the Emperor's eyes and ears for so long that the Emperor is unable to think on his own anymore. Kalis then expresses gratitude to the Emperor for allowing his marriage without any formal procedures, emphasizing that he received the Duchess's tender care and regained consciousness. This makes the Emperor flinch, because it shows not just his marriage, but also that he ignores the Empire's most powerful duchy, allowing Madame Cullion to seize control of it. Kalis is certain that the Emperor worries he will attempt to steal the Imperial family's power, thus, he'll be afraid of him until his death. He then decides to request permission from the Emperor to assume the role of head of the military forces, a position he had previously declined. The Emperor reacts, but Kalis remains calm, stating that he initially denied the position due to his involvement in the duchy's affairs, but now realizes he should have accepted it. The Emperor begins to stammer as he explains that Marquis Velo is currently occupying the position and that he cannot just ask him to step down, prompting Kalis to suggest they discuss the matter at their regular meeting next month, which he gladly accepts. After that, Kalis expresses his desire to visit the First Prince. Meanwhile, Alice strolls in the garden, her thoughts jumbled by Kalis, wondering if her overeating is causing her stomach discomfort. Suddenly, she notices an abandoned house behind the estate, sparking her interest, but she flinches when she hears a rustling sound nearby. Seeing Maris surprises her and makes her anticipate that Madame Cullion is with her, leading her to rush inside the abandoned house to hide. Alice looks out the window, hoping to get a good look at Maris, but she's stunned to see her chatting with a guy named Tom. Listening to them really piques her curiosity about what's going on, especially since Maris seems more anxious than usual. Suddenly, Tom suggests they talk inside the abandoned house, causing Alice to panic. However, Maris quickly declines, expressing her fear as she tells him that the old house is where the previous Duchess died, which makes Alice realize that Maris is talking about Kalis' mother. What a sicko family, letting Kalis' mother die in this isolated cabin away from everyone! Maris then hands him a piece of paper and tells him to go to that location and act as if he's there to pick up the medicine for Madame Cullion. But Tom feels uneasy because the place sells poison. Maris reminds him that their life depends only on the success of Madame Cullion's plan. She assures him that he does not need to be concerned. As long as he delivers the poison, Dr. Helkin will manage the rest. However, she warns him that he needs to deliver it within 2 days, as the plan is set to unfold in 3 days with the arrival of the young master Adelum, while Alice is left in terror, as she can't believe she overheard an assassination plan. All I can say is that Cullion clearly lacks imagination. Like, really? Poison? Again? Back to Kalis, he is now inside the First Prince's room, and as soon as the Imperial Guard leaves, he instructs Dr. Helkin to promptly diagnose the prince's condition. He then recalls the Empire's 3 princes. The first prince, Culicino van Pentium, son of the late Empress. The second prince, Axion Pentium, son of the current Empress. And the third prince, Alvin Pentium, son of one of the Emperor's bedroom maids. The first prince was the most talented of the 3, but a poisoning event 2 years ago rendered him unconscious. The second prince, known as a headache, is a notorious troublemaker in noble circles. The third prince, who we all know is the novel's main lead, is viewed as a stain on the Imperial's family reputation, and no one knows what he looks like. From a hair logic perspective, I think Prion could be the third prince? What do you guys think? After a while, Dr. Helkins tells Kalis that the poison called Rorofo, found in the Western Desert Kingdom, is what caused the first prince to collapse, and that anyone who takes it will end up in a coma. Kalis can't believe he instantly recognizes the type of poison, especially since even the Imperial doctors couldn't figure it out. He then begins to believe that Dr. Helkin possesses extensive knowledge about poisons and anticipates his significant contribution to the duchy's business. Dr. Helkin then tells him that if he even tries to cure the prince with the antidote, he can't guarantee that he'll wake up. The next day, it's bright and sunny, but our girl here can't catch a wink of sleep because she's all worked up about the poisoning plan. Since it's mealtime for the servants, she figures it's a good time to sneak a peek at the Duke without making a fuss. So she takes a deep breath in front of the Duke and tells him that Madame Cullion is planning to try to poison him. However, it looks like the Duke isn't really into her news, so she reacts to his bland reaction. Alice is unsure if Kalis knows of the poisoning plan, but she decides to assume that his silence implies he is unaware, so she starts to reiterate what she overheard. The whole thing will take place during the family banquet, with Dr. Helkin in charge of the poison, and she informs him that this information is correct because she overheard a conversation between Maris and Tom, the servant who will buy the poison. Kalis nods as he listens to her and just thanks her for sharing it with him, which confuses our girl because she expects him to react in some way, such as asking her questions or something. Hearing that she wants him to ask questions, he says he has one, which makes our girl eager to answer it. But to her disappointment, the Duke's query isn't about the poisoning, but rather if she's already decided what she wants. Obviously, Alice gets frustrated because, duh, she worried all night about him getting poisoned, but it appears that he doesn't care. So she sighs, stands up, and coldly tells him that all she wants is to be a priestess before walking out, leaving our guy confused. This might be the couple's first argument, huh? Thankfully, Kalis isn't someone who will simply ignore what happened, and he becomes so concerned about their conversation that he shares everything with Mr. Butler, Adrian, who then informs him that the Duchess was furious because of his blank reaction to the attempted poisoning. Well, to my guy's defense, he already knows about Madame Cullion's plan and has a counter plan, but he goes silent when Adrian says the Duchess doesn't know, so she must have misunderstood that he isn't taking her warning seriously. Kalis instantly composes an apology letter, explaining that he's not taking her warning without thought and hopes she'll stop being angry with him. Aw, he listened and quickly apologized. Adrian is shocked, as this is his first time witnessing the Duke send an apology letter to anyone. But he just shushes and, waits for this romance to blossom. Anyway, the two begin discussing the first prince, and Adrian worries if Helkin can truly be trusted. But it looks like Kalis already has Helkin's family under his care. Helkin has a sickly daughter, and his wife was wrongfully convicted of murder. Thus, he ended up working for the madam since she promised to prove his wife's innocence. Wow, I had no idea the poor doctor has his own family. Kalis then smiles because he plans on using Helkin to help them with the upcoming monster subjugation. While eliminating monsters that threaten the Empire is no picnic, it's also a profitable business for them because of the great value of the skins, teeth, and magic stones they take. A lot of people are hurt while hunting these monsters because the paralysis poison available isn't strong enough. But that's where Helkin comes in. Kalis intends to have him create a poison and will see to it that the duchy receives credit for it. 2 days later, the banquet arrives, which means Madame Cullion's son, Adelum, is also present. Alice sees the mother and son chit-chat in front of her, and all she can think about is, why am I here just to suffer? In any case, she is forgiving Kalis because of the apology letter, but she still doesn't understand how this man has the time to smile at her in this situation. Her attention is then interrupted when Adelum, smirking, tells her how she gave his mother a headache because she wanted to be a priestess. Like mother, like son indeed. Do you think our girl would just say sorry, blah blah? Let me remind you that Alice is a professional actress, and today she chooses to play shocked and innocent, claiming that while others were shocked by her holy power, she expected that he would be joyful because thanks to her prayers, the Duke awakened. Adelum flinches, so our girl continues her act and begins to cry since she's so hurt by what he said, and Sienna supports her. Suddenly, Kalis speaks up, asking them to stop, which makes Adelum smile as he assumes the Duke will back him up. But my guy is talking about you, loser! Kalis glares at him and commands him to treat the Duchess with respect, leading Adelum to whimper, while Madame Cullion decides to change the subject by mentioning that she has prepared a special dessert. A servant comes with the desserts, while the madam informs them that she prepared them herself, leading Alice to fear that they are certainly poisoned. She gives Kalis a signal, but he doesn't even look at her, so she has no choice but to take action before he eats the dessert. She stands up and is about to reveal everything when Helkin rushes in, kneels before the Duke, and declares that the meal is poisoned. Kalis gets confused as Dr. Helkin hastily explains that he put poison in the dessert, but can't bring himself to do it, so he hopes he'll be forgiven. Before Helkin can continue, Madame Cullion slams the table, growls at the doctor, and tells the servants to take him away. The drama! All of them could be actors! Then, Kalis raises his voice and asks Helkin who's behind it all. The doctor gulps, realizing this is now or never, and he points to the madam, saying that she is the one that ordered him. As proof, he plays the recording, which clearly reveals the madam telling him to poison the Duke and threatening to harm his family if he fails. Helkin doesn't stop there. He also reveals that the madam is responsible for the Duke's first poisoning, and because he has the records, they can perform handwriting analysis to confirm that it matches the madam's. Because of this, the old hag is now extremely angry and ready to attack Helkin with a knife, but Kalis stops her in her tracks by pushing her to the floor. Kalis calls Cullion foolish and announces that she and her son will be executed before calling David, who's only waiting for his orders, while Alice stands up in shock, unable to believe Kalis has already assembled his knights. The mother and son are frightened as Kalis instructs David to take them to the dungeon for interrogation. It seems like Cullion's downfall is imminent, but Kalis's plan is lacking something. If he didn't want to inform Alice he had a plan, then he could have at least given her popcorn. As the two are dragged out, the room goes into shock as the Imperial Knights suddenly appear, one of them flaunting that long purple hair, announcing that they have arrived to arrest a criminal on the Emperor's orders. Oh, will you look at that? Another lovely man to love? Not only does the man look familiar to Alice from the novel, but she also recognizes him as Jesus Winston, the captain of the First Order of Imperial Knights and the most powerful minion of the novel's ultimate villain. Jesus is a lunatic who will kill for his master. But what makes Alice uneasy is that this man is supposed to appear after Madame Cullion destroys the duchy. Cute but psycho? Hard to pass on this one. Anyway, Jesus declares that they have come to arrest Cullion and Adelum for academic grade forgery and bribery. Kalis refuses to hand over the two because he has not completed his own investigation. But Jesus shows him the Emperor's decree, leaving him with no choice but to turn over Cullion and Adelum to the Imperial Knights. Gosh, I thought this was the end for the old hag, but it appears that the Emperor is supporting her. Jesus then breaks into a smile as he finally sees the rumored Duchess across the table, Alice, and our girl starts to quiver and retreats as she truly doesn't want to be associated with Jesus of all people. Thank goodness hubby is there to quickly come to her side and ask Jesus about what rumor he's talking about, prompting the knight to apologize for making Alice uncomfortable, while smirkingly claiming that his master is interested in her. Kalis assumes he's talking about the Emperor, but Alice's face becomes pale as she realizes that Jesus is not referring to the Emperor, but to someone else as his real master. If it's not the Emperor, then who? Alice's mind is spinning because she really wants to tell Kalis everything she knows, but who would believe she's in a novel, right? Meanwhile, Kalis' aide is concerned that the Emperor would ignore the poisoning incident and just send Madame Cullion away, something Kalis cannot prevent. But Kalis is unbothered since they've collected plenty of evidence of Cullion's wickedness that they'll give to the Emperor tomorrow, which even the Emperor can't disregard, as it is under the law that attempted murder of a noble family head permits him to execute the criminal. However, the thought that the Emperor orchestrated it all worries him since he knows the Emperor isn't very bright. This makes him think of the present Empress, Raliella Pentium. I've seen many evil empresses, but she doesn't look like one. The Empress is also deemed as a beacon of light, and she despises corrupt nobility such as Birkin for accepting bribes from Cullion. Thinking of the Empress reminds him that he ran into her when he went to see the first prince. The Empress gladly greets him and even apologizes for not being able to persuade the Emperor to care after the duchy while he was unconscious. Nevertheless, now that he is awake, she offers to assist him in annulling the marriage he is clueless of. At the time, Kalis dismissed it, but today, he finds it weird that the Empress brought up his marriage. Wait, so the Empress may be the true villain? When Kalis refuses the Empress's help, she flinches somewhat because she thinks it's unusual of him. But she is now convinced the Duchess must be a kind person and would like to see her soon. The next day, while Kalis is on his way to the palace, Alice takes the chance to ask Adrian if she can visit the temple to pray. But in truth, she wants to request that Prion make her a priestess ASAP. She really wants to go away now that Kalis, who isn't meant to wake up, is awake and Hasis has already appeared, implying that the novel is becoming more twisted and unpredictable. However, a guest from the Imperial Palace has disturbed her plans for today, and it's not just anyone, but Countess Marina, the Empress's right hand, who then reveals that the Empress likes to meet with her. The Countess seems so nice as she delivers the message, but Alice knows it's not just a wish but a command from the Empress, so she has no choice but to comply. When Alice arrives, she is greeted warmly by the Empress, whom she finds beautiful. But our poor girl can't help but be scared because this pretty and innocent-looking Empress is actually the novel's real villain. She uses her beauty and influence to manipulate officials like a chess piece, and she will kill many people to make her son, the second prince, the Emperor. The first victim will be the first prince, followed by Kalis, who refuses to support the second prince, and finally nobles who favor the novel's male lead, the third prince, including Sienna's people. This may appear to be a wicked strategy devised by a loving mother, but the Empress intends to solely use her son while maintaining control of the empire. Seeing the Empress's face is now making me annoyed. In short, the Empress can simply execute anyone who is an annoyance to her, so Alice must avoid making any mistakes today. The Empress initiates the conversation, stating that she's really lovely, which is likely why the Duke wishes to keep her, especially after she saved his life. Alice quickly mentions that it was all because of her prayers, prompting the Empress to mumble, "I know it's all thanks to your holy powers." Okay, she is getting creepier. As Alice's thoughts drift and her sweat begins to drip, the Empress casually claims that the Duke was bedridden for 6 months, making it sound more plausible that her holy power saved him. Alice claims that her holy power is insufficient to accomplish this, but the Empress argues that after the Duke refused to divorce her, she suspected that she has a power that can't be ignored. When Alice realizes there's no turning back, she chooses to be more direct and ask what the Empress wants from her, prompting the Empress to reveal that she wants her to become the next pope and support the second prince to the throne. She wanted to be a priestess to be protected, but she can't do that either. At this point, girl, you need to leave the Empire and avoid their drama. The Emperor examines all the evidence that Kalis has presented to him and decides to send the criminals back to the duchy the next day. Kalis then sees this as his opportunity to warn the Emperor to stop paying attention to his wife. But just as he mentions Alice, the Emperor cuts him off, sounding unconcerned. This prompts Kalis to realize that the Emperor has no interest in Alice. As Kalis steps out of the palace, a thought crosses his mind about the Emperor, but his attention shifts when he notices Adrian, who is breathing heavily and rushing to convey that the Empress has taken the Duchess, leaving Kalis in shock. Meanwhile, the Empress is now clarifying that Alice possesses sufficient holy power to rescue someone from the verge of death, ensuring that no one will dispute her appointment as Pope. Alice wonders whether the Empress understands her current statement, given that the Pentium Empire's population largely worships Helios, despite the separation between the temple and the Imperial Palace. The imperial palace cannot interfere with the selected pope's special rights, and the pope cannot intervene in power battles among family members. As a result, what she is advocating today blatantly disregards the law, and worst of all, she is the empress. Alice then becomes curious about how the empress is aware of her desire to become a priestess, given that only the high priest Prion knows of it. She has a strong suspicion that the empress has someone within the temple, and she doubts that this individual is merely a lowly priest. The thought of the empress swiftly promoting her to the pope sends a chill down her spine, as it would turn her into the villain's pawn, preventing her from leading the comfortable life she's been striving for. She then chooses not to let it happen, so she must decline the empress's offer. However, now that she's aware of the empress's evil plan, Alice knows that the empress will not spare her life if she declines, prompting her heart to accelerate as she considers alternative choices. This is bad. This witch really had our girl in a bind. Thankfully, an enraged Kalis unexpectedly makes a loud crashing sound, knocking down everything in his path to reach his wife, leaving Alice stunned. Whoa, he is so ready to go against anyone! Despite the efforts of the maids to obstruct him, Kalis remains calm as he approaches the empress, explaining that his desperation led him to act rudely. He continues by telling the empress that he was worried about his wife after hearing that she had suddenly brought her there, and seeing all the imperial knights surrounding the area. However, he now acknowledges the inadequacy of his apology and prepares for the empress's punishment as he bows his head. The empress orders her minions to leave and informs Duke Diaruth that she will not impose any punishment upon him. He promptly expresses his gratitude for her mercy. Upon seeing his wife, he quickly holds her gently and inquires about her well-being, noting her pale appearance while stroking her flushed face. He then informs the empress that his wife doesn't appear well, so they have to leave, prompting Alice to quickly bow before the empress to excuse them both. Alice feels a wave of relief when they make it out of the empress's palace alive. Kalis can't help but ask her what the empress said that made her look so pale, making it seem like he's genuinely concerned for her. But she can't really say anything to him because she doesn't have proof that the empress said something that could get her executed right away. And honestly, no one would believe her anyway. After a little pause, she gently reminds him that he had promised before to go along with any request she has. So she desperately asks him to send her somewhere really far away from the Empire. My poor girl really doesn't want to get involved anymore. Kalis takes a moment to process her words before casually asking her why she needs to leave the Empire. Despite her desire to tell him the truth, she just says she'd rather get some rest and suggests that they talk later. Upon arriving home, Alice chooses to head to her room first, and Kalis agrees. As she climbs the stairs, her thoughts linger on the certainty that the Empress will attempt to reach out to her once more, and she contemplates seeking a resolution after she rests, leaving Kalis wondering what the Empress is planning. He believes the Emperor is not responsible for what transpired this time, so the master that Hasis refers to is the Empress. His brain is really braining, and I love it. He then instructs Tayseri to investigate the Empress, leaving him in disbelief and prompting Kalis to reiterate his desire to learn everything about her. Meanwhile, Alice wakes up early in the morning and thinks it's a good time to sort out her thoughts. She carries a pen and paper with her, thinking that if she keeps everything organized, she might just uncover a bit of hope for survival. She then starts listing all the changes that have occurred from the original novel. Kalis regains consciousness. Madame Cullion will be thrown out at any moment, but it will be the Duke's doing, not Lady Meltonese, and the ultimate villain is the Empress, who makes her an offer that she declines. As a result, she concludes that the Empress would surely approach her again, and in the worst-case situation, she may even attempt to kill her, which scares her terribly. She regrets not being able to go to the temple, which she considers to be her safest refuge due to the Empress's insider presence. She then thinks there's just one place where the Empress doesn't have any ties, and that's the Diaruth Duchy, or more precisely, right by Kalis's side. With a glimmer of hope, she pledges to do everything she can to heal Kalis, and together they will defeat the Empress. But how can she tell him that the Empress is the enemy when all of her actions will not be revealed until the end of the novel? In the novel, after the third prince and Sienna defeated the monsters and returned to the capital, the nervous Empress attempted to murder the third prince. While on his assignment, Hasis leaves a clue that leads back to the Empress, showing her as the ultimate villain. However, if she waits until it happens, it will be too late. According to the original story, the next evil act that the Empress will order is the assassination of Lady Rosetta, a Viscountess who was struck by an arrow and perished during the hunting competition held at the Imperial Palace. Initially disguised as an accident, it eventually uncovered the Empress's role. Alice thinks that if Kalis joins the competition and sees the crime happen, they'll have a strong advantage to use against the Empress. She feels pleased because she has found some hope, but suddenly her lamplight goes out, and she hears a creaking sound that prompts her to become alert. It's dark inside, but she sees someone approaching through the terrace with a knife, which leads her to believe that the Empress sent the assassin to kill her. Whoa, the Empress really said ka-chow! It's just been a day, yet she already wants our girl dead! Alice then collects her thoughts, thinking the assassin believes she's in bed, and she plans to run as soon as the knife pierces her sheets. She sprints towards the door, only to discover that another assassin has already trapped her, leaving her with no alternative but to desperately cry out for help. Considering how terrified Alice is, I'm amazed that she still manages to avoid getting stabbed. She begins to grab objects from a table and tosses them at the assassin, including a vase, which sends him reeling. His head starts bleeding, making him even more furious and prompting our girl to scream internally, but she chooses to remain calm and use her holy power. She figures that holy power can also be used to do damage, so she pulls a Kamehameha, causing a blinding light to emanate from her hand, stopping the assassin in his tracks. However, it appears that holy power can only be used for holy purposes, as it heals the assassin's wounds. I really can't take her seriously. She's just so dummy cute. In any case, the assassin is now smiling and preparing to kill her when they hear screams and see the enraged Kalis holding a bloodied sword. When the assassin sees the Duke, he shivers, and Alice takes the chance to shove him away and run towards Kalis. Suddenly, they hear an explosion from outside, and the fact that they are targeting the basement warehouse leads the servants to suspect that it's the work of thieves. Alice is taken aback because these men are definitely assassins, leading her to believe that the Empress is trying to cover up her death by making it appear as if she was killed by thieves. Anyway, now is not the time to ponder about that since a swarm of armed men has encircled them, and Kalis is so enraged that he needs to ask Alice to shut her eyes for a moment. Without waiting for a response, my boyfriend begins slicing them like a fruit ninja, traumatizing Alice to the point that she needs to hide her eyes and ears to avoid hearing those screams. Thankfully, Kalis doesn't waste much time killing them all. He then calls Alice to see whether she's harmed. She is still in a trance, but upon seeing him bathed in blood, our poor girl rushes over to help him, fearing he's injured. However, when Kalis casually claims that it isn't his blood, she looks behind them and sees dead bodies, which leads her to lose her strength. He catches her immediately before she collapses while she holds his chest. She's just checking his heartbeat, guys, that's all. David and the other knights arrive, and Kalis orders them to take the assassin he didn't kill to their underground prison. Once things have calmed down, Adria makes some tea to soothe Alice, but our girl is still nervous without Kalis. Although she detects a faint odor of blood, it dissipates as soon as the door opens, filling the space with a pleasant aroma. What happened, you ask? Kalis made his grand entrance, fresh out of the bath, hair still wet, and strutting around in his robe while flexing those muscles. He's worrying over whether Alice has calmed down, but let me tell you, you don't even need to ask, sir. She's feeling much better now, all thanks to you. Anyway, Kalis sits down and begins to sound serious as he asks her if she has any idea who may be attempting to kill her. You better tell him that it's the Empress! She wishes she could tell Kalis it's the Empress, but she doesn't think that he'll believe her, since who would when they laughed and had tea together just this afternoon? After giving it some thought, I can see why she's keeping it from him. After all, it doesn't make sense to accuse the Empress after meeting her once, would it? Alice feels that it is not the proper time to tell Kalis about how evil the Empress is, so she simply states that she has no idea, which he accepts and says he will instead question the assassin. Looking over at the Duke, Alice then announces her decision to stay in the duchy for a year, as he has requested, and she vows to use her holy power to ensure he recovers completely. After a year, Alice says that they must divorce, and Kalis quickly realizes that she wants his protection for a year, which she does not deny. The novel's plot will finish in 1 year, and she believes she does not have the right to remain as Duchess beyond that. However, the Duke's lack of response makes her sweat, and she begins to second-guess herself, wondering if she should have suggested 2 years instead, even though she is certain that 1 year will be enough for his recovery. More like plenty of time to fall in love. After what feels like an eternity, Kalis finally smiles and agrees to all of her conditions, and they shake hands to officially seal it. David then enters the Duke's room, and our girl can't help but smile when she sees the silver-haired knight, for in the novel, after dying to save Sienna, he still smiles and is delighted to meet the Duke in the afterlife. I almost forgot that everyone except the main characters die in this novel. In any case, David apologetically tells the Duke that the assassin they had detained had killed himself, and since they can't do anything about it, Kalis simply asks him to clean up the mess, which amazes Alice at how merciful Kalis is to his people. Her expression changes when David states that they have finished cleaning the Duchess's room because she remembers the dead bodies and blood everywhere. Thankfully, Mr. Husband has already made plans and claims to have prepared a new room for her, assuring her that she would be safe because he'll be sleeping in the room next to hers. That seems reassuring, but our girl can't take any chances anymore and would prefer to sleep in the same room as Kalis because it's the safest place on the estate. My guy is taken aback by Alice's suggestion, and she goes on to explain that she can simply sleep on the sofa, which Kalis will never allow. So he argues that as a man, he will sleep on the sofa. However, when Alice insists on sleeping on the sofa, Kalis has no choice but to carry her and smile as he places her on the bed. He then tucks her into bed, dims the light, and despite Alice's urge to argue further, exhaustion overcomes her and she falls asleep immediately. When Kalis notices she's now asleep, he finally breaks the act and begins blushing. He then sits on a chair, and as he observes her, he realizes something has changed within him. He is someone who always prioritizes himself in order to protect the duchy's name, and he has never risked his life for anyone, nor has he ever been so concerned about losing someone, until today when he almost lost Alice. The fact that he is so afraid of losing her, as well as the fact that he no longer cares about his own safety, leads him to recognize that his feelings for Alice are not motivated solely by her holy power, but also by his love for her. Always admire a man who does not deny his feelings. And look at his smile after realizing his own emotions. Kalis believes Alice is lying when she claims she has no idea who is after her, but he doesn't care because he swears to protect her with his life. Good, he is aware that something is off. The next morning, Alice finds that Kalis has already left the room, so she goes to see him in his office and becomes shy when he asks if she slept well. She quickly changes the subject and sees that he appears to be very busy, which he confirms and even cites his problem with the first prince. He plans on telling her more about what is going on in the duchy since they have decided to be together for some time now. He starts by informing her that he has no intention of ever supporting the second prince, and that because there's no hope for the first prince, he's looking for someone who will be a better fit. This surprises Alice because it appears that Kalis is not considering the third prince, who, by the way, is the male lead. Thus, backing him means an almost guaranteed win. She casually mentions the Emperor's third son, and Kalis states he's not considering him for the throne since, according to what they know, the Emperor abandoned him. So he lacks enough education, plus no one knows if the third prince is still alive. Alice admits he has a point, given that in the novel, not even the third prince's shadow is seen until he decides to reveal himself. So she intends to find a means of locating the third prince, while making it appear like an accident. For the time being, she requests the Duke's permission to visit the temple in order to inform Prion that she no longer wants to become a priestess. Kalis lets her go, but then claims he'll accompany her because he has business at the temple as well. Nah, he's probably worried that Alice may change her mind and not stay with him. When they arrive at the temple, Alice hurries to greet Violet, while the paranoid husband hugs Alice in front of everyone and introduces himself, causing Violet and the other priests to blush. Alice is feeling awkward, so she explains that they have come to see High Priest Prion, and when Violet informs them that Prion is at the almshouse, Kalis, who is still holding his wife's shoulder, prepares to accompany her there. They look adorable here, and Kalis is giving off some serious jealous husband vibes. However, he is stopped by Alice, who tells him to go work on his business at the temple and that they should meet up later. The lovely priest greets Alice and wonders what she has to say, but our girl is hesitant to say it because, after all, Prion has done so much for her. Prion notices her sweating and realizes she's come to tell him she no longer wants to be a priestess. Well, he realizes this given that Madame Cullion is no longer a threat to her, prompting Alice to apologize to him, but this guy is simply too pure and is relieved that her situation is getting better. After that, Alice warns Prion that someone from the temple is working for a major figure in the Imperial Palace, which surprises the priest because the temple and the Imperial Palace are not permitted to interfere in each other's affairs. She's unable to share any additional information since if the Empress intends to make her pope, it means that the Empress intends to get rid of Prion. But there's no guarantee of Prion's future because the story keeps getting more twisted. This lovely blonde sourly admits that there are corrupt priests, so he trusts her warning but advises her not to tell anyone because it could risk her life. However, their conversation is cut short when a little girl runs up to Prion and knocks Alice down. The small child trembles and panics because she has wounded a noble, prompting Alice to request Prion to calm the child since she's perfectly fine. Thankfully, his calming voice works on the child, who now smiles and thanks Alice for forgiving her before skipping away. Once the child is left, Prion expresses his gratitude to Alice because nearly none of the nobility are tolerant of civilians like her, prompting Alice to recall that Prion is also a commoner. Thus, he must have had a bad experience with nobles. Prion then kneels before her, having noted that she injured her ankle when she fell. And while holy power can't be used on oneself, Alice permits him to heal her, which feels unexpectedly warm. Uh-oh, look who showed up. Kalis, who is so irritated with my innocent and sweet Prion. Love how clueless Prion is. She's not sure why, but she notices Kalis is angry. So she explains that Prion merely healed her ankle, leading Kalis's focus to shift to her with concern. Prion realizes his presence is no longer required, so he leaves, while Alice can't help but find Kalis adorable because he resembles a puppy trying to protect her. Right? He's really cute. Given that her heels are broken, my guy takes advantage of the chance to perform the legendary bridal carry. Look at him blushing over his own work! Cuties! He looks so proud carrying her in front of everyone. But our girl? She looks really mortified, like a corpse being carried. As they make their way to the carriage, David rushes over with shocking news from the palace. Madame Cullion and her son have both ended their lives. Soon after, the bodies are delivered to the duchy, along with the daggers used in the deaths and a note personally handed over by Jesus, whose faint smirk doesn't go unnoticed. Both Kalis and Alice silently come to the same conclusion. The Empress must have silenced Madame Cullion and her son before they had the chance to reveal the truth. They burn the bodies, and Kalis instructs his men to scatter the ashes far from the duchy, unwilling to let even a trace of them remain. As he walks away, he thanks his stepmother for bringing Alice into his life, then coldly wishes her soul a one-way trip to hell. I was expecting revenge, but honestly, that's savage enough. The next day, Kalis shows no mercy to the servants involved in his poisoning and special mention to Maris, because karma finally caught up with her. He also removes all of Madame Cullion's people and appoints the handsome red-haired vice captain, Ruid Austin, as Alice's personal guard. Knowing Ruid survives in the novel, Alice considers him a good luck charm, though his constant presence at her side is starting to feel a little excessive. Alice tries to convince Ruid to take a break, but he's far too dedicated to his duty. She gives up and decides to just return to drafting her plan to bring Kalis and the third prince together. Since Kalis would never seek the prince out on his own, she decides the key is getting Sienna and the prince to meet first. After all, in the original story, it was Sienna who inspired the prince to pursue the throne and help her achieve her revenge. The next day, Alice invites Sienna over for tea. Sienna bluntly admits she's surprised by the invitation, believing Alice had been avoiding her all this time. Alice quickly clears up the misunderstanding, explaining that Madame Cullion's schemes and her own plans to leave the duchy had kept her distant. Now that those issues are behind her, she hopes they can become closer friends, much to Sienna's delight. As they chat, Alice suggests visiting the bookstore alley on Lockfin Street the following day. The capital is divided between noble-dominated Vicente Street and the commoner district of Lockfin Street. Since the third prince is known to frequent the bookstore alley in the original novel, Alice sees it as the perfect chance to bring the story's main leads together. That evening, Ruid informs Kalis that Alice appears to be suffering from insomnia after requesting sleeping medicine from Dr. Helkin. When he hears about Alice and Sienna's outing plan for the next day, Kalis decides to secretly follow them himself, telling Ruid to focus solely on guarding Alice. The day of the outing finally arrives, and Alice can't hide her excitement as she explores the lively streets, which remind her of markets from the modern world. Unlike most nobles, Sienna doesn't complain about the noise or crowds, having spent plenty of time with commoners back at her family's estate. Sienna then notices the distinctive butterfly brooch Alice is wearing. But don't be fooled by its pretty appearance. It's actually Alice's secret backup plan. The brooch is filled with sleeping medicine, and if the leads somehow fail to interact, she's fully prepared to make the third prince pass out and force an encounter. I guess that answers the insomnia question. As they browse the bookstore alley, Alice finally runs into Alvin Pentium, the third prince. She immediately catches Alvin and Sienna locking eyes, but so much for love at first sight. Plan A is a complete bust. Alvin simply walks away while Sienna returns her attention to Alice, only commenting that it's unusual to see someone with red eyes. What she doesn't know is that Alvin's true eye color is a sparkling opal, the signature trait of the imperial family. He disguises them as red since it is a sign of bad luck and people tend to avoid anyone who has them. Alice and Sienna step into the same bookstore as Alvin, but to Alice's disappointment, he does nothing more than purchase a few books and prepare to leave. Hoping to salvage her plan, she perks up when she overhears a customer asking about the store's best-selling books kept in the basement, and immediately insists on buying them as well. Her enthusiasm vanishes when she discovers they're actually steamy romance novels, making even Ruid look embarrassed. But it's far too late to back out now. After casting a glance out the window, likely at the Duke secretly keeping watch, Ruid heads off with the owner to fetch the books, giving Alice the perfect chance to chase after Alvin in the alley, where they encounter two thieves. Kalis has been observing from a distance since Alice bumped into the blonde guy, and he can't help but question whether it was truly an accident. He also considers Alice's real intention when she urges Sienna to enter the bookstore. Now, Ruid glances in his direction as if he's about to leave, so Kalis simply nods. Suddenly, out of nowhere, someone collides with him, and when he looks back toward the bookstore window, Alice is gone, causing him to start to panic. Back in the alley, the thugs turn their attention to Alice, so Alvin steps in, shooting them a cold glare and warning them to show some respect to a lady. Alice braces herself for an epic display of his special powers, but one punch sends the prince sleeping. Sir? Should I be concerned or laughing? When one thug tries to touch our girl, she stabs his hand with her brooch and he immediately falls. This action provokes the other one, who retaliates swiftly by striking Alice's hand, causing her brooch to fly from her grasp. Fortunately, Alvin lunges at the gangster and they both tumble to the ground. Worried, Alice checks on the third prince and notices blood dripping from his head, prompting her to act quickly with her holy power to stop the bleeding. The truth is, the third prince can actually control fire spirits, and his ability to change his eye color stems from his spirit master abilities. Just then, Sienna and Ruid hurry over to her, surprised to see men lying on the ground. Sienna then assumes that the three men have banded together to harm Alice, but Alice quickly clarifies that the blonde man actually saved her. Suddenly, Alice feels dizzy, and Ruid suggests they return to the duchy right away, but Alice insists on bringing the man who saved her. Before leaving the area, Alice emphasizes to Ruid that he should safely take the man who saved her to the duchy. Shortly after, Kalis arrives, quickly surveys the surroundings, and spots Alice's brooch on the ground. As he picks it up, he reflects on his earlier impression of her as a timid rabbit, only to realize she can be a predator after witnessing Alice stab one of the gangsters. He nearly steps forward to support her, but the blonde guy moves faster. Watching the blonde guy makes Kalis curious about his identity and why Alice is following him. Judging by the blonde guy's appearance, Kalis suspects he's not a commoner, leading him to wonder if he could be a hidden child of a noble family. In that moment, Kalis recalls Alice mentioning the Emperor's third son, prompting him to conclude that the man before him might be that hidden son. Back in the duchy, the third prince lies in bed while Sienna asks Alice if she has any idea who the man in front of them might be, sensing that he is concealing his true social status. Sienna then notices the man's rugged robe, which gives him the appearance of a commoner, and something falls from it. She picks it up and sees the name engraved on it, Alvin Pentium, prompting her to glance back at the sleeping man. Alice then tells Sienna that she wants to take a rest, so she will leave the blonde guy in her care, which Sienna readily accepts. Once Alice steps outside, she feels excited, knowing her mission to bring the leads together has been a success. Alice sees Kalis and realizes he's been searching for her, which sends her heart racing. He tells her he heard about the incident on Lockfen Street, steps closer, and lightly brushes his fingers against the bandage on her cheek before asking if it hurts a lot. Suddenly, a loud noise erupts from the guest room, startling them both and prompting them to rush in. They're confused to find Alvin on the floor while Sienna stands fiercely, leading Kalis to ask her for an explanation. When Sienna cannot explain, Alvin reveals that Sienna threw him across the room, leaving both Alice and Kalis completely stunned. In the original novel, Sienna meets the third prince soon after Kalis dies. The prince's situation reminds Sienna of Kalis, making her feel sorry for him, so she took excellent care of him. As they spend time together, the third prince develops feelings for Sienna and eventually confesses his love to her. Alice feels frustrated as she watches them bicker, especially since they're supposed to be falling in love. Sienna insists her actions were in self-defense. She wants to confirm his identity, but instead of answering her, he chases after her, forcing her to protect herself. Alvin then defends himself, saying he simply asked for his dagger back, but she sends him flying. This prompts Sienna to explain that the dagger, which has the third prince's name inscribed on it, belongs to the Imperial Palace, and if someone is found carrying it, it is only natural that their identity needs to be verified. Alvin quickly grabs the dagger from Sienna, prompting Kalis to intervene. Kalis warns him that stealing from the palace is a serious crime, punishable by death, regardless of whether he's a commoner or a noble. He adds that if the man is not the third prince, he will face trial and execution. The room falls silent until the man insists he did not steal the dagger. Suddenly, his eyes turn opalescent, revealing his true identity as the third prince of the empire, Alvin Pentium, and he explains that the dagger is the only gift his mother left him before her death. Everyone greets him respectfully, while Alice's heart races as she realizes that Kalis and the third prince have finally met. As Duke, Kalis apologizes to the third prince for the incident. Meanwhile, Alice enthusiastically credits Alvin with saving her from the thugs and offers to give him a proper thank you gift. When he immediately declines, she doesn't push the matter and instead heals him by holding his hand. Smiling, she promises that if he ever needs help, she'll come running. And the fact that Alvin doesn't reject her words leaves Alice feeling hopeful. Kalis offers to escort Alvin home, and at the prince's request, they take the mountain route. However, disaster strikes when their carriage suddenly crashes, leaving the coachman unconscious from the shock. While Kalis investigates the surroundings, Alvin stays behind to tend to the coachman. That's when the culprit finally appears, a massive ogre. The sight of the monster leaves Alvin frozen in place, and before Kalis can rush to his aid, the ogre slams him into the ground. Thankfully, Alvin manages to save himself by stabbing the ogre's hand with his dagger. As the monster howls in pain, Kalis orders him to escape on horseback while he figures out a way to bring the beast down. But Alvin refuses to leave. Though mentally resilient, he is painfully aware that he's nowhere near as strong or reliable in a fight as Kalis. Look at this poor thing trembling! It's actually refreshing and cute. Alvin declares that as a prince of the empire, he cannot abandon his people. He then summons his fire spirit, Ignis, who coils around the ogre and restrains it long enough for Kalis to finish the monster with a single slash. After checking that Alvin is unharmed, Kalis is surprised to learn that he's a spirit master. When the adorable little dragon snuggles against Alvin, the Duke can hardly believe his eyes. He had always thought spirit contracts existed only in storybooks. The second prince is talentless and reckless, and the first prince is on his deathbed. So Kalis feels that if it is revealed that the third prince is a spirit master, the first prince's supporters will turn to the third prince. Kalis considers the third prince to be a blockhead, but if he is polished, he knows this man will become a diamond in the future. So he kneels before him and declares that he is the most suitable person to be the crown prince. The prince is visibly alarmed by the suggestion and firmly states that he has no intention of stepping forward for any position of power. In the end, Kalis simply escorts him home. Before parting ways, he reminds Alvin that the doors of the duchy will always be open to him. But Alvin responds with a serious expression that such a day will never come. At breakfast the next morning, Alice immediately checks Kalis for injuries after hearing about the monster attack. The concern makes him blush, and when he teasingly asks if she's worried about him, Alice turns red too. Meanwhile, Sienna has to clear her throat to remind the pair she's also in the room. Single and lonely like me, so the flirting must stop. As they eat, Kalis announces his intention to support the third prince in becoming crown prince. But Sienna immediately objects, describing him as emotional, impatient, and reckless. Kalis counters that the prince's outburst the previous day stemmed from his desire to protect his mother's final gift. His mother was a maid who was never recognized as a royal consort. She passed away as a result of not receiving sufficient treatment for her condition, and the palace did not even recognize her body. Kalis then bluntly tells Sienna that it was her who was swayed by her emotions, became upset, and refused to let the prince explain himself, which is quite unlike her. Alice simply smiles as she listens to them, already realizing that Kalis is subtly trying to convince Sienna to support the third prince. When he turns to ask for her opinion, she quickly agrees with his decision. He then mentions that the third prince is a spirit master, which surprises Sienna, but Kalis immediately notices that Alice doesn't look surprised at all. He's so sharp! Kalis is puzzled by Alice's lack of reaction, but decides to set it aside for now and shifts the conversation to how the third prince had completely rejected him last night. They agree they still need a way to win the prince over, and Kalis suggests frequent visits to Lockfin Street so they can accidentally meet him again. To their surprise, Sienna volunteers to meet the third prince herself that very day, insisting she won't repeat her mistake again. Plus, she also wants to apologize properly. To prevent any trouble, Alice offers to accompany her, but Kalis quickly cuts her off, declaring they are going out together today. For their first date, Kalis shows up in a noticeably cleaner look, his hair neatly brushed back. Alice immediately notices the change, and Kalis unconsciously mutters that she looks beautiful. The comment makes her blush, prompting him to quickly compliment her hairpin instead. She sounds slightly disappointed and only replies that he is very sharp. However, she is completely caught off guard when he leans in with a playful, flirty smile and says it's because he's very interested in her. Flustered and overheating, she quickly rushes to the carriage to escape him. Cuties. Inside the carriage, Kalis informs Alice that they are headed to Madame Rosewell's salon, the most famous boutique in the capital. He is surprised, however, that she has never heard of it. Alice explains it away by saying she used to live in the countryside, though it only makes Kalis more curious. How could someone who knows so many secrets be unaware of something so well known? When they arrive, Kalis tells her to go in first, as he needs to stop somewhere briefly and will return soon. Alice panics internally, but watches him leave anyway. "Why are you leaving her like this, sir? I have concerns!" As she enters the salon, a staff member immediately greets her, while gossiping nobles buzz around her like flies. Amid the chatter, her attention is drawn to a blonde noble lady giving her a cold, icy stare. Just then, Madame Rosewell greets Alice warmly, beaming as she explains she's delighted. This is the first time a husband has personally requested special care for his wife. Okay, maybe I'm not mad at the Duke anymore. Maybe he has a reason. Anyway, Alice likes how comfortable the Madame's outfit is since it doesn't have a corset. So the Madame shows her the catalog, and when Alice agrees to use light yellow fabric, the Blondina Cappuccina from earlier butts in. Her name is Lady Chastain, and she claims that the Madame has already agreed to make her a dress from that fabric, which confuses the Madame because it was she who rejected the fabric during their discussion. As the dispute escalates, Alice calmly steps in and decides to choose a different fabric altogether, saying light yellow would make her look like a sickly chick anyway. Slay! As soon as Lady Chastain leaves, the Madame apologizes to Alice and adds that the lady's crankiness may be related from old rumors of marriage talks between her and Duke Diaruth in the past. Alice feels troubled by it, but when the Madame mentions that the rumor was from 3 years ago and that the Duke rejected it instantly, her mood improves. After a while, the Duke arrives, but Alice is dismayed to see him talking to Lady Chastain, which makes her realize she must be jealous. Now get your man! When Kalis turns and sees her, his face instantly lights up and he walks over to Alice. Noticing Lady Chastain's clearly hurt expression, Alice decides to rub salt in her wound just a little by letting her witness how completely smitten Kalis is with her. She extends her hand and Kalis gently takes it, smiling as he tells her to watch her step, making Lady Chastain leave so defeated. Seeing the couple so openly affectionate, Madame Rosewell comments that the bad rumors about them must be false and vows to improve the Duchess's reputation even further. Inside the carriage, Kalis gently urges Alice to speak her mind. After hesitating, she shyly asks about his relationship with Lady Chastain. He looks so confused, so Alice mentions their marriage talks in the past, prompting him to respond, "Ah, that happened?" As if the idea is barely worth remembering. His lack of interest comforts her and makes her finally smile. Kalis then states clearly that he was only listening to Blondina because she was speaking, and he assures Alice that he has no other lady, making Alice feel shy and claiming that she was just simply curious. Don't lie, sweetheart. Now that the misunderstanding is cleared up, Kalis pulls out their wedding ring, and Alice can't help but gasp at the huge diamond. The reaction makes him quietly proud. He explains that it's not just any ordinary ring. It has a built-in force field that protects her in danger, and if her blood ever touches it, he'll be instantly transported to her side. Kalis then, a little flustered, takes her hand and gently slips the ring onto her finger before asking her not to remove it, while Alice softly promises that she won't. And? Just kiss already! The slow burn is killing me, but I love it! Meanwhile, on Lockfin Street, Alvin is just minding his own business buying apples when Sienna suddenly shows up. The second he sees her, he bolts. Even though he's already out of breath, she keeps chasing after him, making the poor prince panic and asks if she's there to blast him again. That's when Sienna realizes she may have seriously traumatized the scaredy cat prince. So she simply hands over the apples he forgot. Alvin takes them and immediately leaves, while the redhead is left standing there looking worried that she managed to fail her mission this quickly. Just as Sienna decides to head back, she spots a commotion nearby. To her surprise, it's the third prince standing up for a child being accused by a noble of stealing his wallet. Sienna immediately jumps in, declaring that she knows the child and that the handsome blondie is her friend. Neither of them would ever steal from anyone. The noble bursts out laughing at the idea of a noble lady being friends with commoners, but Sienna fires right back, saying that social status has nothing to do with friendship, and that not everyone is obsessed with rank like he is. The crowd quickly starts murmuring in agreement, leaving the noble embarrassed. And when his servant finally arrives carrying the wallet he had actually dropped on the street, the man has no choice but to walk away in defeat. The child happily thanks Sienna, calling her teacher, before giving Alvin a polite bow as well. Not wanting to leave just yet, he grabs onto both of their sleeves and excitedly suggests that Alvin come visit their classes sometime. As it turns out, Sienna teaches magic to commoner children with magical talent who can't afford to attend school. Hearing that, Alvin's face immediately brightens, and he gladly says he'd love to visit. Oh, looks like we've got a tiny Cupid here! After the little boy leaves, Alvin admits he's impressed by how much Sienna does for the commoners. She explains that she befriended several commoner children when she was young, and it broke her heart to see talented kids unable to study magic simply because they couldn't afford school. What started as helping a few children eventually grew into proper classes because she enjoyed teaching so much. Alvin quietly watches her speak, clearly seeing her in a new light. By the end, the two finally clear up their misunderstandings, sincerely apologize to each other, and seal it all with a handshake. Our novel leads are finally on good terms! 2 days later, Sienna takes Alvin to the place where she teaches, and he's surprised to find such a warm and cheerful community. The little boy immediately runs over to greet them, proudly handing them some cookies his mother baked as a thank you gift for helping him the other day. The group then heads to the field, where Sienna hands out paper and pencils to the kids, and to Alvin as well. Today's lesson is drawing magic circles. They're only learning the basics, but one child already finds it difficult, so Sienna decides to motivate everyone with a quick demonstration. The powerful spell she unleashes leaves the kids completely awestruck. Alvin is just as amazed, realizing that Sienna is on a whole different level since she doesn't even need a magic circle to cast magic. The children immediately swarm around her, begging to be taught, while the shy little girl lingers at the back. Seeing her alone, Alvin offers to help. He isn't exactly confident in his own skills, but he's delighted when she agrees. Sienna glances over at Alvin and can't help but smile when she sees him happily helping two children with their magic circles. The prince has adapted surprisingly well. As they work, the shy little girl opens up, telling Alvin that she wants to become a great magician someday so she can help people just like teacher Sienna, while the other kid wants to be a math teacher. Their innocent dreams warm Alvin's heart, and he gently assures them that they'll both grow up to be wonderful people someday. Aww, our prince is such a cinnamon roll. And why is his blushing face always so cute? Once class is over and they're on their way home, Alvin tells Sienna that she's done an amazing job inspiring the children and becoming a positive influence in their lives. In response, Sienna says she believes he has the ability to care for and lead even more people as well. She adds that if he ever chooses that path, both the Duke's family and she herself will support him. Alvin falls silent at her words, so Sienna decides not to press the matter. Instead, she simply smiles and tells him she'll let him know when the next class is scheduled before heading off. Now alone with his thoughts, Alvin realizes something surprising. He couldn't dismiss Sienna's words the way he had brushed off the Dukes before. For the first time, he finds himself seriously considering the possibility that he might actually be capable of becoming the crown prince. The thought barely lasts a moment before Alvin smacks his own head for even considering it. He quickly reminds himself of his mother's final words. If the palace ever discovers he's alive, they'll hunt him down. Running away is the only path to safety and the only way he can be happy. Just then, his adorable dog Bertley comes running toward him. This good boy is Alvin's only true friend. A year ago, he discovered the pup half buried in the snow, abandoned by his owner. Alvin couldn't help but see himself in the lonely little dog. Both cast aside, both with nowhere to go. Since then, the two have been inseparable best friends. Alvin and Bertley are enjoying a peaceful moment at home when their door is suddenly kicked open by none other than Axion, the second prince. Alvin immediately pales in fear. Seeing his owner threatened, loyal Bertley charges forward, but the poor dog is mercilessly beaten until he can barely move. After that, Axion grabs Alvin by the hair, having apparently just learned that his younger brother is still alive. What infuriates him even more is Alvin's recent meeting with Duke Diaruth. He mocks Alvin, sneering that even with a powerful ally, he's still a pathetic fool who can't even save a single dog. Says the guy who knows nothing about his mother. As the prince approaches Bertley to finish the job, Alvin throws himself in front of his beloved friend. The blade meant for Bertley strikes Alvin instead. Before Axion can do anything else, his knights remind him of a scheduled dinner with the Empress. Annoyed but unwilling to keep her waiting, he decides to leave. For now. Left behind, Alvin can only break down in tears. The whole situation feels horribly unfair. He did everything he was told, stayed hidden, avoided the imperial family, and kept to himself. Yet trouble still found him. But when he remembers his brother's cruel words about being pathetic and unable to save even a single dog, something inside him reignites. He stands up and vows to save Bertley no matter what. Meanwhile, at the duchy, a guard approaches Alice as she's taking a stroll through the garden and reports that an injured man has collapsed outside the estate gates. The moment she sees Alvin's dagger in the guard's hand, she immediately rushes over, while Rued orders the guards to summon the Duke at once. Alvin is curled up and covered in blood when Alice finally arrives. Using the last of his strength, he begs her to save Bertley before collapsing in her arms. Alice immediately panics at the sight of his injuries, but Kalis arrives just in time to calm her down and has Alvin brought inside. While Dr. Helkin treats the deep wound on Alvin's back, Bertley remains in critical condition. Remembering Alvin's desperate plea, Alice uses her holy power, and thank goodness she does, because moments later the good boy is alive, awake, and happily licking faces again. It's only afterward that Alice notices the stunned looks on Sienna's and Helkin's faces, while Kalis lets out a wary sigh. Realizing she may have revealed a little too much of her power, she can only go, "Oops." Good job, Queen. I just know Alvin would have started his villain arc / John Wick if Bertley hadn't survived. Sienna is absolutely stunned after witnessing the true extent of Alice's holy power. Meanwhile, Kalis wastes no time reminding Dr. Helkin that today's events are not to leave this room. The poor doctor gets so terrified that he immediately goes, "What? Did something happen just now? I didn't see anything." He understood the assignment perfectly. After using so much of her holy power, Alice suddenly feels dizzy. Kalis immediately carries her back to her room, but she can't help noticing that he seems unusually upset. Once they're alone, Alice mentions that she plans to use her holy power on the third prince the next day. That finally makes Kalis snap. He slams a hand onto the side table and calls her name, looking both worried and frustrated. He insists that Dr. Helkin can treat Alvin just fine and that she doesn't need to exhaust herself. Misunderstanding his concern, Alice assumes he's worried about losing access to her power and quickly reassures him that her abilities won't weaken or run out. Kalis is left completely baffled, having never once thought of her that way. When Alice asks why he's angry, he finally admits the truth. He's worried because he doesn't want her overworking herself. Then, leaning closer, he shyly confesses that she's far more precious to him than the third prince. Cue the blushing. As the atmosphere grows increasingly romantic and they seem moments away from a kiss, she suddenly throws herself onto the bed and buries herself under the blankets. Apparently, she knows one kiss would never be enough. This girl, really? Kalis is left frozen in place, wondering what just happened. In the end, he simply leaves her to rest, chuckling to himself outside her room. Our man is absolutely smitten. Rued is so shocked that he literally rubs his eyes, wondering if he's hallucinating. Is the Duke actually smiling right now? However, Kalis' rare smile shifts to his usual icy expression when he sees Rued, who has come to let him know that the third prince is now awake. Kalis immediately visits Alvin, who frantically recounts how the second prince discovered he was alive and violently attacked him. After everything that happened, Alvin realizes just how powerless he is. At this rate, he won't be able to protect himself, Bertley, or anyone else he cares about. The attack becomes a wake-up call, and with a determined voice, he finally declares that he's ready to try becoming the crown prince. Our boy is done running, while Kalis promises to support him with everything he has. Though he warns that the path ahead won't be easy. Thankfully, Alvin has already made up his mind and is ready to face whatever comes next. As soon as Alice wakes up the next morning, her thoughts immediately drift back to the fact that Kalis had almost kissed her the night before. If you ask me, she's just regretting dodging the opportunity. But her expression soon darkens as she remembers that their relationship is only meant to last another year. Not wanting to get her hopes up, she convinces herself that Kalis was simply carried away by the atmosphere. Determined not to dwell on it, she gives herself a quick slap on the cheeks and shifts her focus to something more important: checking on the third prince. The moment Alvin sees her, he immediately bows his head and sincerely thanks her for saving Bertley. Alvin then shares that he'll be staying at the duchy to receive a proper education. Alice is so delighted by the news that she immediately grabs his hands, cheering him on in his journey to becoming the next crown prince. The timid prince who once looked like a wimping dog is now gone, replaced by someone who sounds far more confident and determined. However, their wholesome moment is cut short when Sienna spots the two holding hands and marches straight toward them with an annoyed look. Don't worry, this isn't jealousy yet. The novel leads aren't at that stage. Sienna is actually upset because Alvin is casually holding the Duchess's hand when she doesn't even do that. She reminds him to be careful, not to cause misunderstanding, making poor Alvin, who still seems slightly terrified of his future wife, only nod and agree. Before the two can start bickering again, Alice steps in and points out that Alvin's injured shoulder will only get in the way of his studies. She quickly heals him, then excuses herself so she can finally get something to eat, while Sienna keeps the prince company. When Alice spots Kalis nearby, she immediately changes direction and tries to make a quiet escape. Unfortunately, Kalis notices right away. Not only does he catch her attempted escape, but he also walks straight toward her with a teasing smile, clearly intending to bring up what happened yesterday. Alice instantly turns bright red and starts malfunctioning. Seeing her reaction, Kalis innocently says that he's simply asking if she's feeling better today, before casually leaning closer and wondering if she's perhaps thinking about that other thing that happened yesterday. Realizing she's being teased, Alice immediately starts pouting, making Kalis laugh watching her get all flustered, and he can't help but think to himself just how ridiculously cute she is. Not long after, news spreads across the Empire that the war hero Duke Diaruth has personally taken the mysterious third prince under his wing. The articles also question why the Duke chose Alvin over the second prince, leaving everyone curious about what hidden talents the third prince might possess. Alice is relieved to see that the coverage is overwhelmingly positive, with hardly any criticism directed at Alvin. Something that's probably thanks to Kalis's stellar reputation. Another article catches her eye, this one confirming that the High Priest will participate in the upcoming Imperial hunting competition. Since the Temple and the Empire have traditionally remained separate, this is a significant development. With the Temple's influence declining after more than a century without a new oracle, joining the event could help strengthen ties with the palace. Alice remembers that Prion receives an oracle at some point in the novel, but frustratingly, she can't recall when. Her thoughts are interrupted by Alvin's scream. Looking over, she finds Alvin and Sienna practicing for a dance and completely failing to be romantic. Instead of growing closer, the two are bickering like a cat and dog. Well, a good enemies to lovers story never disappoints. Watching the chaos unfold, Alice decides that what they need isn't more practice, it's sweets. Alice and Ruid are now in front of the popular bakery that Alvin mentioned, and our girl is amazed by how elegant the interior looks. A staff member greets her, but when Alice mentions wanting to buy chocolate tarts, the staff apologizes and informs her that they are already sold out. That's when Ruid casually steps forward and reminds the employee that they're speaking to Duchess Diaruth. Alice nearly dies of embarrassment on the spot, but to her surprise, the staff member instantly apologizes and promises to have fresh tarts prepared right away. Queen, that's how influential the title of Duchess Diaruth is. Meanwhile, at the palace, Kalis is officially appointed as the head of the Empire's military forces. After the meeting, he deliberately approaches Count Lotrin and greets him. The old man is a renowned veteran knight who spent his life on the battlefield before retiring as the count of the largest territory in the south. He's also the father of the late empress and the grandfather of the first prince. Count Lotrin explains that he came to the capital after hearing that Kalis had finally awakened, though his sharp gaze makes it clear that he's also trying to gauge the Duke's intentions. Not wanting to dance around the issue, Kalis directly asks for his support of the third prince. The Count gently reminds him that he's still the first prince's grandfather. With a hopeful smile, he admits that he still believes his grandson may one day wake up. Seeing that, Kalis decides not to push the matter and simply replies that it would be a joyous day if that ever happened. After his conversation with Count Lotrin, Kalis returns to his carriage, where his aide, Tayseri, congratulates him on becoming the Empire's new head of the military. Their discussion soon shifts to the duchy, particularly how Alice has been supervising Alvin's and Sienna's dance practice. Honestly, Kalis doesn't even need a report to know how that's going. He can already picture Alvin and Sienna bickering while poor Alice gets caught in the middle trying to keep the peace. Thinking of his poor wife dealing with those two, Kalis decides to pick up a small gift for her. And where does he choose to go? The famous bakery, of course! While waiting for her chocolate tart, Alice spots Prion buying pastries and immediately notices that the High Priest has a surprisingly adorable taste in sweets. Just look at his selection! It's full of cute desserts! He's a softy muffin! The two sit down to chat, and Alice uses the chance to ask whether it's true that the temple hasn't received an oracle in over 100 years. Prion confirms it and says that all he can do is continue praying every day. Meanwhile, Alice is far too busy basking in the holy aura practically shining around him. I really can't take this girl seriously! After a while, Prion says his goodbyes, so Alice walks him to the exit. Just then, someone accidentally bumps into her, prompting Prion to grab her hand to steady her. When Alice turns around, she gets surprised because standing right there is Kalis. The timing, the hand-holding, it's giving, I just caught my wife with another man and I'm living for the drama. Kalis walks over and casually calls Alice my dear, instantly making her blush. But she quickly notices his brows are slightly furrowed and realizes he's looking at something, her hand still holding Prion's. Flustered, she immediately pulls away and rambles an explanation about what happened. Thankfully, Kalis doesn't misunderstand. He just smiles and reassures her he's not upset. Still, he gives Prion a cold look while thanking him for helping his wife, even though Prion remains his usual warm sunshine self. Yeah, I'm not seeing second lead energy here. Prion is just genuinely kind. After Prion leaves, Alice's chocolate tarts are finally ready, which completely ruins Kalis's plan to play the sweet, thoughtful husband. He looks so dejected and tells the chef he won't be buying anything since his wife has already ordered what he intended to get. Curious, Alice asks if he even likes chocolate tarts. Kalis calmly smiles and says he doesn't. He just wanted to buy them for her. That catches Alice off guard, though not as much as Ruid standing right behind her, silently blushing as he witnesses everything like he's got front row seats to a romantic drama. Kalis thinks it would be a waste to head home after failing to buy Alice a gift, so he tries hard to come up with an excuse to stay with her a little longer. But before he can think of anything, Alice is already on her way out. So in a rush, he suddenly blurts out, "Walnut pie!" Ruid, representing all of us, is blushing on the sidelines as Kalis tells Alice that walnut pie is his favorite dessert and that he wishes to share one with her right now. Without much hesitation, he takes her hand and says he knows a good place nearby where they can eat it. Smiling warmly, he adds that she'll definitely like it. Alice can only nod while blushing as she gets gently pulled along. The bakery has such a cozy, homey vibe, and the cat lounging at the entrance instantly makes it a 10 out of 10 for me. Though the feisty little thing clearly has an attitude. Kalis casually mentions that her name is Sally and easily earns her affection with a few pets. Since the owner is still out, Kalis leads Alice to a balcony table with a lovely view. Between the charming bakery and adorable cat, Alice imagines the owner must be a gentle, sweet soul. That image is completely shattered when a massive bald man suddenly appears. Still, despite his intimidating appearance, his warm smile makes him seem more like cotton candy than a brute. Introducing himself as Hakun, the bakery owner, he immediately tears up, unable to believe the tiny duke he once knew married such a beauty. Kalis quickly cuts him off and orders pies instead, which Hakun happily goes to prepare. Once Hakun leaves, Kalis tells Alice that the bakery owner used to be a mercenary. They met on the battlefield when Kalis was 12, and Hakun saved his life several times. In return, Kalis offered him any reward he wanted, but Hakun only asked for help opening a dessert shop because he loved baking. The bakery struggled at first, but Hakun's talent eventually made it a success, and the two remained close friends over the years. Meanwhile, Alice is fascinated by the softer side of Kalis. Watching him smile as he talks about an old friend makes her heart flutter. The romance is marinating beautifully. Since they're already talking about childhood memories, Kalis asks about hers. The question leaves Alice stumped. Should she tell him about her past life, where she spent her time beating up little boys? Or the original Alice from the novel, who was quiet and reserved? In the end, she settles for a vague answer, saying she had a normal childhood with few friends and no particular hobbies. But when she notices a hint of disappointment in Kalis's eyes, she can't help but feel uneasy, wondering if he's trying to piece something together about her. Thankfully, Hakun arrives with their desserts at just the right moment, and Alice quickly brushes the strange feeling aside. While enjoying their walnut pie, Kalis suddenly admits that he suspects Alice is hiding something important from him. However, he quickly assures her that he's not asking for answers. He simply wants her to know that he'll wait until she's ready and that he'll believe her no matter what, even if the truth is something completely out of this world. Seriously, is this man a psychic? Then he takes her hand and tells her that whenever she needs him, all she has to do is reach out. The gesture leaves Alice completely flustered, and she can only nod. Later that night, while gazing at the stars from her balcony, Alice finally stops denying the truth. She likes Kalis. She really does. I mean, who would not? Our husband is such a green flag. Meanwhile, Sienna rubs her sore feet. She really had tried to help Alvin learn to dance, but his attention kept drifting to the Duchess, who always encouraged him with a smile. She hates it because she has only just started feeling like Alice was the older sister she never had, yet Alvin seemed to monopolize her attention. Cutie. Wanting a snack, Sienna heads to the kitchen, only to notice that the party hall is still lit up despite the late hour. Curious, Sienna peeks into the party hall and is surprised to find Alvin practicing his dance steps alone. When he suddenly slips, she rushes in and catches him. Talk about a role reversal! Flustered, Alvin quickly steps back and asks what she's doing there. Sienna intends to compliment his improved dancing, but somehow ends up teasing him for getting the steps wrong again. Realizing her mistake, she smacks her own mouth and awkwardly claims she came for chocolate tarts, before shyly asking if they could practice together afterward. While snacking, Sienna admits she was jealous of how much attention he got from the Duchess. Alvin, however, points out that the Duchess was actually watching Sienna the whole time. She was just too busy looking at the prince to notice. Sienna apologizes, while Alvin is relieved because he really wants to be friends with her. After all, it was Sienna's encouraging words in the past that helped change his mindset. After clearing up the misunderstanding, the two finally practice without bickering. And with all that eye contact, yeah, something is definitely brewing. The next day, Alice is delighted to see Sienna and Alvin happily sharing tea together. Little does she know, the two are secretly competing over who can master dancing with their eyes closed first. At least they've become closer. Alice joins Sienna and Alvin for tea and opens a letter from the Imperial Palace. It's an invitation to the upcoming hunting competition, but only House Deerruth family members are allowed to attend, which means Alvin is excluded. The move is so obvious, and Alice can tell it's the Empress trying to delay his debut into society. Sienna then declares she won't participate either, and encourages Alvin to use the extra time to practice, instantly lifting his spirits. Later that evening, Alice realizes she hasn't seen Kalis all day because of his new duties as the head of the military forces. She finds herself wanting to confess her feelings, but a troubling thought stops her. If Kalis returns those feelings, and let's be honest, he absolutely does, she would remain the Duchess forever. Luxury sounds nice, but the title comes with endless responsibilities, forcing her to give up the freedom she's always dreamed of. She's not wrong, though. It's finally the day of the hunting competition. Alice looks surprisingly sporty in her trouser outfit, while Kalis shows up with an idol-like hairstyle and a perfectly fitted outfit. The result? Alice has absolutely no idea where to look. His broad chest? Those toned arms? The way the outfit hugs his long legs? I said focus, darling, but not there. Jokes aside, she had a serious mission today. In the original novel, Viscountess Rosetta is struck by an arrow during the hunt after the Empress lures her into a trap. Jesus is the one who fires the shot, disguising it as an accident. Knowing what's supposed to happen, Alice plans to catch Jesus in the act and steal his pendant. The accessory bears the Empress's picture, making it the perfect piece of evidence to prove who's really behind the plot. At the hunting competition, Alice is forced to endure the ladies' banquet hall on her own, since the men and women are seated separately. Without Kalis around, a group of chatty noblewomen mercilessly surrounds her. Before long, one particularly nasty lady mocks her, claiming Duke Deerruth only treats her well because he pities a country bumpkin. Meanwhile, Lady Chastain sitting right beside her looks like she wants to stop the woman before she embarrasses herself. Seems Blondina has learned not to mess with Alice. Instead of arguing, Alice simply finds the accusation amusing. She casually tucks her hair behind her ear, deliberately showing off the massive diamond wedding ring on her finger. The ladies immediately gush over how cherished she must be, leaving the rude witch speechless. With tea time finally over, Alice leaves the tent to look for Viscountess Rosetta. So focused on her search, she accidentally steps on someone's foot, only to discover it's the very person she's been looking for. The beautiful woman with sky blue hair and violet eyes is none other than Viscountess Celine Rosetta. Want to know why the Empress wants to eliminate this innocent lady? Well, she's carrying the second prince's baby in her belly. They're not in love. Who would fall for that monster? The prince forced her into becoming his mistress by pressuring the Rosetta family, only to abandon her once he learned of the pregnancy. Furious, Celine threatened to expose everything to the emperor, and when word reached the empress, she decided to silence her before a scandal involving an illegitimate heir could erupt. Like mother, like son. Unfortunately. Determined to change her fate, Alice befriends Celine and learns that, due to the Viscount's injured leg, she will be participating in the hunt herself. Alice is surprised to learn that noble women can participate in the hunt. Celine explains that they often join alongside their fathers, brothers, or husbands. Hearing that, Alice immediately goes looking for Caelus and finds him speaking with Count Latron. Although the Count only appeared briefly in the novel, he played an important role. He was the only noble who supported the Third Prince's monster subjugation campaign when everyone else ignored him. The prince even asked him to become his advisor, but Latron refused, burdened by guilt over failing to protect his grandson, the first prince. Since then, he has lived quietly in the south. I used to wonder why Alice never tried healing the first prince, but then I realized it would put her right in the political spotlight. Like, she might end up becoming the crown princess or a saintess. After Count Latron leaves, Alice tells Caelus she wants to join the hunt. To make sure he won't refuse, she puts on her best teary-eyed expression and complains that she doesn't want to be left alone. The moment she says she wants to stay with him, Caelus is completely defeated and reluctantly agrees. Soon, the Emperor, Empress, and Prince Axion arrive to begin the competition. The Emperor delivers the opening speech, but honestly, the man can't seem to get through a single sentence without reading from his notes. Ah, Axion got his brains from him, huh? Axion walks over and starts running his mouth, saying Caelus is probably still sick and should be careful not to embarrass himself today. Caelus casually agrees that he hasn't fully recovered yet, then tells Axion to keep his distance or he might accidentally mistake him for a beast during the hunt. Ouch! The prince is left completely red-faced. I swear, our couple stays winning in every verbal battle. Axion's knights immediately reach for their swords, but the moment Caelus releases his aura, they shrink back like frightened puppies, so the second prince has no choice but to retreat. Yeah, bye you rude, useless, good-for-nothing prince! With that nuisance gone, Alice quickly drags Caelus away to follow Viscountess Rosetta into the hunting grounds. Meanwhile, back at the duchy, Alvin and Sienna are busy practicing swordsmanship when Bertley suddenly jumps onto Alvin's back. As you guys already know, Alvin loses his balance and crashes into Sienna. Realizing how close they are, Alvin quickly scrambles away, his face bright red, while Sienna seems just as flustered. Bertley is totally nailing the job that Alice has been struggling with for ages. Such a good boy! Back in the hunting grounds, Caelus quietly follows wherever Alice leads, while she keeps a close eye on Viscountess Rosetta. Suddenly, Alice hears a woman scream and immediately tries to run toward it, but Caelus stops her. When she explains what she heard, he claims that he didn't hear anything, though he reassures her that he trusts her judgment. Moments later, another scream echoes from a different direction. This time, both of them hear it and rush to investigate. To Alice's surprise, it isn't the Viscountess, but a young nobleman who has fallen into a man-made pit and sprained his ankle. After helping him out, Caelus is met with another request. The nobleman asks to be escorted back to his group since he refuses to fire a signal flare. Doing so would mean forfeiting the hunt, and that means his father will surely punish him. Alice urges Caelus to help the injured nobleman, promising that she'll stay put and be perfectly safe thanks to the defensive ring she's wearing. As usual, Caelus hasn't much luck winning arguments against his wife, so in the end, he carries the nobleman off to locate his group as quickly as possible. With Caelus gone, Alice immediately sets out to find Viscountess Rosetta. It doesn't take long before she spots her, but the sight makes her so shocked. The Viscountess is already unconscious on the ground, and standing right beside her is Jesus, casually greeting our girl with a smile. Alice immediately bites her finger hard enough to draw blood and lets it drip onto her ring, expecting its magic to activate. To her horror, nothing happens. Caelus didn't teleport to her side. Noticing her reaction, Jesus casually explains that the ring is useless here because no magic or divine power can function within the subspace they're trapped in. A special space his master created specifically for Alice and Viscountess Rosetta. As far as Alice knows, the Empress shouldn't have access to a power like this. But before she can dwell on that mystery, a far more alarming thought hits her. This elaborate trap was never just meant for the Viscountess. Alice herself was one of the targets all along. Alice, darling, the Empress literally sent people after you in your own duchy. At this point, being one of her targets should be expected. Realizing she's in serious danger, Alice tries to escape, only to discover she can't leave the subspace. Jesus then reveals that the injured nobleman was part of the plan all along, a decoy meant to separate her from Kalis. Panic finally sets in, and Alice desperately calls out for her husband. Jesus seems to enjoy her fear, so he decides to toy with her before killing her, and starts by slashing her arm, sending her crashing to the ground. Oh, you crazy lunatic psycho! The moment Kalis sees that injury, it's over for you. Just then, Alice hears a voice telling her to trust him. When the voice calls her Han Suyon, she realizes she's speaking to the divine being. Thinking she might be losing her mind, Alice chooses to take the chance and prays for help. A brilliant light erupts, blasting Jesus away. However, her connection to God is so powerful that Alice coughs up blood and loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Kalis sets the injured nobleman down, only for the man to suddenly vanish before his eyes. That's when it hits him. The nobleman was nothing more than a black magic doll used to lure him away. Realizing Alice is in danger, Kalis immediately races back. He finds Alice lying on the ground, covered in blood. For a brief moment, he hesitates to check her pulse, afraid of what he might find. The instant he feels a heartbeat, relief washes over him. But it doesn't last long. She's still badly injured, having lost a dangerous amount of blood. Fury begins to boil inside him at the thought of whoever hurt her. Thankfully, High Priest Prion arrives at that moment. Kalis immediately asks him to save Alice, and after using his holy power, her breathing finally steadies and warmth slowly returns to her body. Once Alice's condition stabilizes, Kalis asks Prion why he happened to be there, making the High Priest realize he's under suspicion. Prion quickly explains that he rushed over after sensing an enormous surge of holy power. In return, he asks Kalis what happened, and Kalis reveals the incident involving the black magic doll, though he still has no idea who was behind it. When Alice remains unconscious despite being treated with holy power, Prion concludes that something else must have drained her strength. That leads him to suspect the massive burst of holy power came from Alice herself. Knowing there's no point hiding the truth anymore, Kalis silently confirms his suspicions, allowing Prion to piece together that Alice was the one who saved the Duke from his long slumber. To protect her, Prion suggests claiming the holy power was his, since other priests likely sensed it too. If the temple learns the truth, Alice could become a target. When Kalis asks why he's helping, Prion simply says that forcing a priest's life onto Alice would only burden her. Finally, a genuinely good priest! Meanwhile, Alice dreams of the divine being, who tells her to find him in the place dedicated to his worship before she finally wakes up. The moment she opens her eyes, her first concern isn't herself. It's Jesus. She immediately blurts out that they need to catch him. Beside her, Kalis looks visibly relieved to see her awake and explains that the competition has ended. The after-party was cancelled and no attacker was found at the scene. Only Alice and the unconscious Viscountess were discovered. When Alice asks about Jesus' pendant, Kalis says he couldn't find it. She instantly tries to get up, insisting they need to search the area again for evidence. Kalis stops her and tells her to calm down, but Alice snaps that she needs proof to show him how evil the Empress truly is. To her surprise, Kalis replies that she doesn't need proof for that. He already suspects the Empress is behind it. Kalis reveals that he already knows the Empress was behind the assassins sent to the duchy. He also figured out that Alice purposely brought the third prince to him so they could work together against her. Even earlier that day, he knew she had sent him away so she could secretly follow Viscountess Rosetta. The revelation leaves Alice stunned, but Kalis gently explains that he never questioned her because he trusts her. Alice starts tearing up, wondering why Kalis is always so kind to her, which only leaves him confused. Why would she even question something so obvious? Still, he takes the moment seriously, kneels in front of her, and confesses that he loves her deeply. so much that he would even give his life for her. He then nervously asks if she dislikes him. When Alice softly says she doesn't, he asks for her consent to kiss her. And at last, they share their first kiss. Unfortunately, our girl gets so flustered that she overheats and passes out. Poor girl really short-circuited. Kalis gets a sense of deja vu and decides to just let Alice rest for the night. The next morning, she wakes up squealing as she remembers what happened, only to find Kalis still sitting beside her. He never left. How could he after his wife fainted from a single kiss? Wanting clarity, he tells her he won't pretend last night didn't happen. Alice admits she feels the same, but asks for time to think since she's still unsure about living as a duchess. Kalis gently kisses her hand and promises to wait for as long as she needs. A true green flag. The duchy is currently protecting Viscountess Rosetta after observing how the second prince reacted upon seeing her unconscious. Alice feels relieved. If the Viscountess had been sent home last night, she would have likely been assassinated by now. Kalis then mentions that, according to Dr. Helkin, the Viscountess is pregnant, and the second prince's panicked reaction strongly suggests the child is Axion's. Kalis is, as always, disturbingly accurate. Alice decides it's time to explain everything that happened the day before. Jesus was the attacker acting under the Empress's orders. She joined the hunt to recover the pendant as evidence, and she suspects the Empress is involved in black magic. Kalis asks how she knows so many hidden details, and Alice nearly confesses about her past life and being transported into the novel. But imagining Kalis calling every doctor in the Empire to examine her, she quickly backs off and instead claims it's some kind of divine blessing or something. For now, Kalis decides to focus on gathering solid proof that the Empress and Jesus are working together, putting the black magic issue aside temporarily. What Jesus used was high-level black magic, yet Alice's holy power still managed to break through it. Because of that, Prion covered for them. If the truth got out, it would only create more complications. Kalis plans to persuade the Viscountess to testify against the second prince, but he looks too scary, so Alice offers to do it herself. However, she's caught completely off guard when she arrives and finds the Viscountess already kneeling on the floor in front of her. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!